Once a man named Takakaru Raizu suddenly died of a heart attack, only to awaken as a killing machine in a strange new world. That's when the story of Walm begins. A soldier, Walm emerges from a battle where most enemies have already fallen, bringing victory for his platoon. After scavenging through the enemy soldiers, Walm puts his hands together, which his fellow fighter Jose calls out as praying on the battlefield. Considering it a habit, Walm shrugs it off and they regroup with the rest of the squadron. On their way back to camp, Jose speaks of the 9 lives that Walm took. Walm doesn't see it as prideful, saying killing is just part of the job. If the state orders to kill, they kill. Jose calls him serious and suggests they hurry to camp. At night, the victorious battalion is at peace, enjoying a meal after a long day of fighting. That's when Commander Duet catches Walm off guard to discuss the 9 enemies he killed. He does so as if they were competing, since he killed 15 himself thanks to the skill he possesses. Their conversation is interrupted by Burrito and his rookie mate Noor, who call the skill a cheat on the battlefield. Duet defends it as legal and permissible. Noor asks if his skill can really pierce through armor, and Duet proudly agrees. Walm considers skills noble and asks Jose if they're worth wishing for. Jose explains the difference between magic and skills, giving Duet's powerhouse moves as an example of a sure kill technique. While magic feels surreal, a skill is earned as a human ability. This fascinates Walm, and he wishes he had a skill too. Jose asks if he would rather have a skill or use magic, to which Walm replies that magic is more impressive. They joke about it while Walm grows sleepy. Moments later, they start discussing their strategies for the next war, which is due tomorrow. And tomorrow, they're up against the Kingdom of Mired. They're strategizing to completely split up the Liberto Trade Federation, but their ultimate target is going to be Mired. Walm and his platoon's core objective is going to be paired up with High Cirque Empire's forces that are going to gather up at Saria City. And from there, together, they're going to climb Mired. Commander Duet warns them that it's going to be unlike any battle that they've endured so far. It's going to be havoc, and they better be prepared for what's coming. Fast forward to the day when the swords are about to get drenched in blood. Absolute massacre takes the central stage, and soldiers can be seen mercilessly piercing through each other's throats. Amid the chaos, Walm is distracted by his thoughts and nearly gets killed before Duet rescues him. They hold the land of Saria for now, waiting for the next morning to advance on Mired. The city, however, is in ruins. Poverty and prostitution fill the streets, which unsettles Walm. He gives money to a beggar woman, but Jose warns that helping will only attract more. He further mocks Walm for his softer side despite being a soldier. But all this is because of his shared memories of being from a poor background. He chose to be a soldier because money makes money, and he needed money desperately. Further, Duet explains Saria's history. Once called the Konoha Kingdom, it was rich and fertile 5 years ago. After rebellion and invasions, it fell into ruin. The Mired Grand Duke was once a Konohan nobleman who had abandoned the kingdom, which was later trampled and vandalized by another neighboring kingdom known as Fious. At that time, Fious was at war with High Cirque, and High Cirque was too weak to resist. The Duke seized Konoha, becoming ruler of Mired, leaving the land impoverished. This is mainly why Commander Duet wants to go against Mired and own it for himself. Chatting and walking across the dirty streets of Konoha, they've made their way to the bar to fetch a meal and drinks for the night because tomorrow is a big day for them. They spend their night drinking, whereas Walm questions himself if it's actually right to be a soldier. A soldier? More like a murderer? Morning dawns in Mired, where Commander Gerard Berger rallies his troops to finally end the 5-year war. Meanwhile, Duet and his smaller force prepare to face the Duke's army. 3 units are sent from Saria to capture 3 routes into Mired, including a fort that blocks the main road. Duet's squad is assigned to the fort. They set camp nearby and wait for the right moment. Jose remarks that newcomers often die quickly in combat, and asks Noor and Burrito to rely on Walm if danger comes. Noor agrees, having heard of Walm's skill in battle. Walm warns Noor to stay close and saves her from danger. Duet commands the charge. Soldiers climb the fort walls under heavy fire, and Walm is the first to reach the top. He cuts down enemies until Noor's scream draws his attention. A heavily armored knight with a spear axe closes in on her. He throws a shield at him to grab his attention, and the knight leaps onto Walm with full force. Walm manages to somehow dodge his attack, but gets his arm injured in between. Considering the strength of this knight, it's safe to say that his level matches that of Commander Duet's, but since he is away fighting enemies, Walm will have to take this one himself soon, otherwise Noor's life will be at stake. Walm presses the attack. The knight injures him again, aiming for his eyes, but Walm narrowly dodges. Seeing the knight hesitate, Walm seizes the moment. His body felt lighter, his sword as if it was mere metal scrap, but with just one mighty blow, he managed to pierce through the knight's defenses, resulting in his body split into two. The enemy forces falter in fear. This marks the awakening of Walm's true skill. Duel praises him and tells him to rest while others finish the fight. Noor thanks Walm for saving her life. The fort is theirs, but the war is far from over. They have only taken the first step. Inspecting the dead guy's body, Duel concludes that they're dealing with a magic user specializing in wind and fire. The most shocking part of all is the cause of this man's death, as his face is half clobbered and smashed with a mysterious ability. Days passed until the Battle of the Fort. Many troops were able to escape and capitalized on guerrilla warfare in the nearby forest. The High Cirque army, which was supposed to en route for the Mired capital, forcibly stopped, resulting in a huge loss of resources and casualties for them. Tension rises as reports of caravans being attacked reaches an all-time high. The Mired troops that ran off have yet to be located. Meanwhile, Walm deduces the cause of death of the magic user. Judging by his crushed face, he concludes that it must have been a result of repeated strikes to the face instead of one smash. Duel suspects that a shield must have been used for the job, which makes the entire team wonder if they're dealing with a skill user here. Of course, Commander Duel confirms that there are more than enough people out there who can utilize the power skill, but he's confident that this is the work of the iron wall skill instead, which boosts the effectiveness of a wooden shield to an iron one. Thanks to that skill, even using an ordinary wooden shield turns into a lethal weapon and turns a person's face into mush. Absorbing this information, the wheels in Walm's brain start churning for an answer. Knowing that only magic or skill users are able to use such an ability, he senses that the Mired troops must have several people currently doing the same thing in guerrilla warfare. Long story short, things are looking bad. The team learns that an entire search party's attempts to find the caravan were proven unsuccessful. Instead, they're the ones who suffered 30 casualties. Despite their easy victory over their enemies at the fort, it is natural to predict the enemy's downfall. But the complete opposite is happening, and the Mired troops appear more resilient than ever. Smoking a cigarette, Walm theorizes if the smell of tobacco is being detected in the environment. Jose argues otherwise, stating that it would be ridiculous because their own bodily stench is stronger than the smell of tobacco. Burrito casually asks if he can wear some perfume while he's at it, prompting his team to make fun of the guy because they think he should pair it with a cute skirt too. Noor takes the spotlight by highlighting a dead man's body, hanging like a fruit from a tree branch. As if he's proud to see the corpse, Jose explains that these forest people actually sold information to their enemies, so they were hanged for it. His heartless admittance leaves Noor at a loss for words, while Walm senses her discomfort and calls her out, expressing that he wasn't used to seeing horrible things either. But he started feeling less disgust when someone advised him what these people did to their own allies. Still, Noor finds herself lost in thought, as if she feels sorry. Walm doesn't say a word and keeps busy to himself. The rest of them are discussing plans to take out the enemy troops so they can steal their loot. However, Jose reminds everyone that they're dealing with strong magic and skill users, so it won't be a walk in the park. Instead, it will be like fighting Duel and Walm at the same time. Burrito admits that it's going to be tough for them, even if they had a numbers advantage, while Walm wonders why he's not being treated in the class of a normal soldier. Suddenly, a loud explosion alerts the attention of the group. Jose senses that something is happening in 400 meters and has likely spiraled with their search network. Deciding to target them from the right, Commander Duel orders his team to defeat every last one of them. Walm and the others are approaching fast until he locates the Mired troops. One of the enemy soldiers spots him and alerts everyone of the flanking reinforcements. However, it's already too late for him as our protagonist slices open his head with his weapon. Moving on to his next target, Walm slaughters his enemies. Suddenly, Jose notices something that settles him. He realizes that they're dealing with the leading adventurers party. The long-haired young man from their team urges for their escape, knowing that enemy soldiers are moving in on the attack. Their team captain also appears to be doing well. Meanwhile, Noor inquires about the adventurer party and learns that these people are responsible for annihilating demons and clearing dungeons. Finally, it all starts to click in Walm's head. It was never the Mired troops that were capable of defeating their men. It was actually the adventurers party and the elite knights. The battle rages on with Duel overwhelming one of the enemy forces. This guy has a shield on him and blocks his attack. leading the commander to suspect that he's the one with the iron wall skill. It bothers him that the guild decided to go back on its position of neutrality from abstaining in the war, but strangely they've decided to participate all of a sudden. His opponent sarcastically remarks that he and his friends are doing it out of their own free will. Focusing on Walm, he senses an attack coming from behind. Swiftly maneuvering himself, he dodges the wind strike, which goes on to slice off one of the soldiers' heads. Realizing that he's dealing with a competent wind-type magic user, Walm focuses on his surroundings by ducking and sensing where the attack came from. At last, he spots the person responsible. She's the captain of the adventurers' party, and though she's merely a child, Walm can't afford to let a magic user run free. Adopting his murderous intent, he goes for the kill and pushes ahead. The elite knights quickly swoop in to protect the magic user, but their efforts are pitifully useless in the end, as Walm capably disarms one of them, literally, and then goes on to slash the other guy clean. With both men spooling out blood on the ground, one of them begs to be spared. But in Walm's eyes, he ruthlessly declares that no one's coming to help any of them. Coldly, he murders the soldier with a slash, ensuing a moment of silence and frustration for the young magic user. She roars her frustrations, questioning how someone like him is capable of taking a life so easily. Her hard-hitting words slow Walm down for a moment, but his eyes quickly adjust to the dread and he educates his enemy that this is normal on the battlefield. He also reminds her that she's responsible for killing people for the sake of her side too, so there's no point in discussing anything. In a last-ditch effort to strike him down, the magic user releases another wind strike. Except it is predictable and the same as last time, making it easy for Walm to evade it and get close to her. He's seconds away from ending her life. Walm charges his battle axe and reaches for her neck, when suddenly something stops him. His eyes widen in shock when he sees her raising her shield with a power skill. But it doesn't mean anything, because Walm cuts off the shield and deals considerable damage to the magic user. She topples down with a sliced arm, clutched to her injury. Walm analyzes this brief interaction and recalls that she changed into a defensive stance right when she was about to be killed. This shows that she's well-trained with good war experience, so he doesn't understand why she felt so angry at him. Suddenly, he realizes the problem. Despite her abilities, he realizes that she's not used to killing others. Walking up to her in her miserable state, Walm orders her to surrender with a machine-like cold expression on his face. His haunting demeanor causes her to panic and lash out at him with random wind strikes. Though Walm is initially surprised, he catches her slipping on her feet. It brings him great joy to remind her that she too is responsible for killing a person. First, he takes out her weapon with a swing, which leads her to wonder if this is the end of the line for her. Aiming for the killing blow, Walm aims to pierce her body when he senses someone approaching from his side. Deeming it to be a threat, he quickly turns back to block the hit. Despite Walm successfully being able to defend himself, he narrowly escapes a critical blow. Reclaiming some distance, he takes a look at his assailant. This young man is a swordmaster who urges his leader to stay behind. She roars out Elle's name in concern, leading Walm to understand that this girl leads the adventurers' party. Elle is in position to defend his leader while a certain feeling of dread crutches Walm. He absolutely despises having to do this, and yet he makes his move with such an incredible speed that it stuns the swordmaster. Walm goes for a clean horizontal swing, but his opponent is fast and evades the attack, repositioning himself again. Through this small encounter, Walm understands that his opponent must be using body acceleration, which means he's dealing with another wind magic user. Elle goes for a retaliation strike with his blade, but he misses Walm, who mocks the guy for ever thinking he stood a chance. His provocation pisses him off until suddenly, Elle sees one of his friends get injured nearby. Distracted, he decides to ramp up his body acceleration speed to end the fight. However, Walm has already gotten used to his skill and casually dodges. Out of nowhere, the girl starts screaming in tears, begging Emi to dodge. Her shout startles both the swordmaster and Walm, until suddenly the swordmaster is hit with an incredibly painful blow. Still, he chooses to fight against Walm, pointing out how the enemy invaders have no regard for human life. Smiling at him in return, Walm points out his hypocritical thinking. The adventurers were killing people left and right, and seemed to have gotten used to the idea that they were incapable of being killed. Bawling his eyes out, the adventurer tells him to just shut up. His denial means nothing, because Walm casually directs his opponent's sword, and then goes on to stab his shoulder with a clean, piercing strike. Walm pins this guy to the nearest tree with his battle axe. allowing himself an easy chance to take out his blade and kill the leader next. The pinned swordmaster screams in agony, while the adventurer party's leader succumbs to the haunting realization that every single one of her party members has fallen. Walm admits that he's envious of the fact that she's not used to killing. First, he takes out the swordmaster with a killing blow. Suddenly, Walm senses something and dodges an attack so powerful it messes up his left arm. Questioning where this hidden spell even came from, he looks around for answers. It's all made clear when he sees the girl taking a stand, even with her injured arm. Anger in his eyes, she unleashes an incredibly powerful ripple of magic that obliterates everything in its path. Walm is starting to realize that he's dealing with a much more powerful foe than he imagined, but that same spell is responsible for killing many of the soldiers from his troop. Duel alerts the team that they're dealing with an area of effect user, so it's best to split up. When the dust settles, Walm comes out to confront her, but realizes that she ran away to escape. After the fight, Duel and Jose discuss the scale of the magic spell. They predict that whoever unleashed it must have suffered immense backlash from using the ability. Jose inquires if they should chase after her, but his commander explains that there's no point in doing meaningless work. Instead, Duel intends to lead his men toward the Mired capital. Back to our protagonist, Walm inspects his bruised arm and reflects how competent those adventurers were. Their only flaw was being unable to kill on the battlefield when needed, or else this fight would have turned out a lot differently. Still, he can't help but feel paralyzed by the girl's expression. Walm knows that he doesn't enjoy killing either. As for the girl, she's last seen escaping in tears, questioning what kind of monster she was dealing with back there. A while passes after the battle, and the soldiers have gone on a break. Willett extends his hand, instructing Walm to grab hold of it. He knows that Walm is keen on learning magic, so he thinks this is a good opportunity to teach him. Excited, Walm grabs his hand right away. Their intertwined hands appear strange in the eyes of Noor until Jose explains that Willett is transferring his own magical energy to Walm through this procedure. Thanks to this test, they'll be able to learn if Walm has the ability to wield magic or not. If he does, he can shoot fireballs and water spears much like Willett does. Jose teases them by saying they're having an intimate moment through hand-holding. Walm's irritation shows on his face while Willett urges him to keep focusing. He closes his eyes shut, sensing a cold feeling, to which Willett confirms it's a requirement before using elemental magic. Parting their hands, he instructs Walm to keep focusing on the palms of his own hands and visualize the flow of water. Heeding his advice, he visualizes the image of a flowing river, until suddenly a water ball emerges out of nowhere in his palm. Excited, Walm thinks that he's conquered magic, but in Wheelot's eyes, his level is one of sheer disappointment. He emphasizes that it's useless and decides to take a different approach by instructing Walm to become a human, just like he is. Duel laughs at the realization that they've got 2 human wells to use at their disposal. The magic user urges Walm not to sweat, because it will hinder his magical power. If he fails to control his water excretions, he'll end up in a drained state. The thing about water magic is that it requires less mana compared to the usual skill. This makes Walm question if he's been using magic this entire time, even though he was told he was a skill user. Willett corrects him and confirms that in fact, all skills in body enforcement magic requires magical power. The distinction lies in whether or not the magic is elemental, like unleashing fireballs, or if it's technique-based, like using a power attack or an iron wall ability. Both are ultimately magic, but in different forms. Willett is shocked that he's unaware of such a basic concept, to which Walm states that he didn't receive any education in his childhood as the son of a farmer. Next up, Willett thinks it's time to test his aptitude for fire magic. Walm sits down across from him in a state of meditation, when suddenly Willett's attention is stolen by a bunch of guys. When he turns to look at Walm, he is stunned by him being able to unleash a column of flames. Helpless and feeling hot, he begs Willett for advice. In the next scene, Walm is out here testing the extent of his fire magic. His magic threatens to burn the entire camp with its scale. It even burns Burrito's hair. Walm realizes that he's making a mess and begs the magic user to help him stop the chaos. Willett calmly casts a bubble of water magic and engulfs him whole, preventing the flames. He then chucks his body right into a nearby pond, causing Walm to hit his head. He really doesn't like the way he just got ragdolled. The magic user extends his hand and pulls his friend back up. Willett is supremely impressed to admit that Walm is capable of fire magic and urges them to continue their training. While they're busy, the scene cuts to Commander Duel, who finds a messenger from the Allied troops. Apparently, Captain Ligurian has laid out an order specifically for Duel, which puts a smile on his face and he feels curious about its contents. The messenger suddenly declares that Commander Duel and his team are crazy, a reaction that the commander didn't expect. Fast forwarding ahead, we see Walm discussing the strategy they were briefed to follow. Duel's squad is supposed to merge with the main battalion, commencing the start of another war in the plains of Reref region. This location threatens the defeat of the High Cirque Empire, as Mired and Fious, both enemy nations, have supreme advantage over terrain. It's suspected that their army will move to attack the Mired army first. Lord Fious Winson is currently discussing battle strategy with his council members. It's shocking to them how the High Cirque soldiers are crazy enough to take on their army of 6,000. Lord Fious thinks that it's going to be an easy way to demolish them and make an example out of their corpses. He suspects that the Mired army will first be attacked by Jeff's cavalry battalion, as understandably the High Cirque forces are clever, and will send their best troops for this mission. However, Lord Fious declares that they're not their main enemies. He roars his men to seize the victory for their king. The thing is, this man is planning to take out both Mired and High Cirque today so that he can rule alone. Lord Fious spots the High Cirque troops in the distance and realizes that they've already begun moving, thus commencing the start of the war. Hailing from the High Cirque Empire are only a mere 15,000 men, and they're going up against the allied forces of Mired and Fious, combined with a total of 25,000. Duel's squad is at the forefront leading the assault. Jose casually admits that the only reason the Mired forces are acting tough right now is because they're stepping foot on the Fious lands. Commander Duel knows well that this location was picked specifically to wipe out the High Cirque forces, while Nor wonders what they're doing by chit-chatting when the war has already begun. Walm notices his team leader's expression, who doesn't seem to be sure about the operation. The commander briefs them on what's about to happen. The High Cirque army intends to attack the Mired stronghold first, and that clash will decide everything. As for the Ligurian battalion, which consists of the Duel squad, they'll be merging together to attack Jeff's cavalry battalion. Walm is shocked. Jose even points out how reckless this plan is. It doesn't make sense that they're the ones being chosen for this role. Duel reveals that the Ligurian battalion is known to have the most experience of all, but he admits that this whole thing is concerning. Burrito can't comprehend the scale of the situation, but the commander paints the picture by saying that they'll be catching up on speed. If any of one of them tries to break pace and stop, they'll be crushed by the running soldiers. Stopping means death, and this fight relies on them swinging their weapons without stopping for even a moment. Duel also can't place a finger on why their squad is specifically chosen to be on the front lines, making the ordeal even more difficult for them. He blames Walm for everything. If he hadn't showed off his power skill and killed one of the enemy commanders, none of this would have happened. Walm blames Duel for being even more impulsive than him, a response that makes him shut up. Well, the good thing is that they have two power move uses by their side, alongside Willott's excellent magic ability. Walm turns around to look at the state of the battle and wonders if they can really even compete with the cavalry soldiers at all. His resolve wavers because it seems tough whether they'll make it out in one piece without dying. Duel also finds it strange that the fight has already begun when there aren't any official orders yet. The commander is beginning to think that this plan is already shattering apart. However, he is confident that Commander Berger wouldn't miscalculate something like this. At long last, the main army of Fious finally arrives. Duel doesn't know what to do, while Nor questions how they should react. Alongside the main army of Fious, they even spot the reserve army of Mired soon approaching this way. At this rate, if they don't act now, the High Cirque army will be demolished. Duel decides to take everything in his own hands and roars the battalion to target the Fious stronghold. This is a strange order because it deviates from the soldiers' original strategy to target Mired. However, there's no point arguing because the cavalrymen have already taken off. The High Cirque soldiers are pushed to the brim, as Walm strengthens his resolve and bursts forth, a scene which can be described as running to one's own death. Walm pushes on ahead. Despite struggling to keep up with the cavalry, he successfully kills one of the enemy soldiers with a clean swing. Repositioning himself, he pushes forward. Commander Duel shares his theory. He connected the dots. The entire thing was a setup from the start. It was to show the enemy forces that the High Cirque army is dysfunctioning, which allowed the enemy armies to approach them all the way here. That original plan from the beginning was a lie, which forced the enemy to make adjustments, and now most of the forces are stuck dealing with the High Cirque army. This means Lord Fious' army headquarters are open for attack, which means their real target is to actually target the headquarters. The squad leader emphasizes that they must act quickly because their main army won't be able to keep up for long while acting as the decoy. Walm pushes forth, knowing that this is the only chance they have to win over their enemies. As he's racing forth, the enemy soldiers put up shields to confront the forefront squad. Duel commands both his magic users to attack, allowing Walm to cook up a fireball in his hand. Manipulating it successfully, he directs it straight at the enemy soldiers. The attack successfully connects and obliterates the shield warriors. Willet is proud of him, and with this initial attack, they've opened up a gap to surge forth. The enemy soldiers are trying their best to stop their squad, but Duel obliterates them alongside his team to remove all obstacles in their way. Reaching closer and closer to headquarters, they spot a bunch of anti-cavalry barricades laid out in the open. Duel commands his team to clear a path for the cavalrymen so they can attack. Walm and the others exert their physical limits to grab and pull the barricades rooted into the ground. Thankfully, they manage to clear an opening for them just in time. With this, they've officially become the first of Jeff's battalion to have reached this far. Jose emphasizes the cavalrymen to make way ahead, allowing them to sweep right in and slaughter the enemy soldiers with their lances. One of the enemy soldiers is injured and gets brutally crushed under the weight of the cavalrymen. Things are looking difficult for Walm, as he struggles to keep up his breath after constant exertions and sprinting into the battlefield. However, Duel explains that they can't lose heart here, as the battle has only just begun. They're approaching the Fious stronghold, and that's going to be the real challenge. Speaking of the main troops of Fious, they send a powerful combatant who ends up knocking away Walm with a powerful swing. This same warrior is demolishing the Ligurian battalion. From the looks of it, this guy is a royal guard, wearing a completely different set of equipment from the other soldiers. Walm understands that he's dealing with someone from within Fious' stronghold, which is a hint that their leader is close by. Walm roars at this warrior to step aside because death is guaranteed for him. Ordering him to remain silent, the warrior lashes his sword at him. The force behind his swing is so powerful that it is beginning to overwhelm him. Walm is redirected and somehow escapes the swing. He's in a pinch, while Duel and his squad are struggling to deal with the never-ending wave of Fious soldiers. Jose points out a strange group lurking around the left rear side, and they're running away instead of defending the stronghold. Duel catches on and realizes that this must be the general trying to escape. He asks his men to partner up with him for the mission, but unfortunately all of them are busy dealing with dozens of soldiers at a time. Commander Duel is caught in a desperate situation. This is the only chance he has of killing their general, and he realizes that these enemy soldiers are merely a distraction for the general's escape plan. Duel becomes outrageous in his fury, annoyed that the enemy forces lack honor on the battlefield. Back to Walm, he confronts the royal guard and decides to use his power move, but despite his best shot, he is still overwhelmed even with the usage of his skill. In the end, the royal guard sends our protagonist flying from the impact, knocking Walm's body with a heavy crash. He coughs out blood and can barely move, but despite his injuries, Walm's body is screaming to burn this man down. His only shot of defeating this guy is using fire magic, but even a fireball won't be enough against his fully armored opponent. As long as they're protecting the stronghold, it will be impossible to reach their headquarters. The war will be lost if the general manages to get away. That means everything rests on his shoulders. Walm intends to let loose and unleash the strongest of his flames. He does that by engulfing everything around him with a column of fire, causing his opponent to feel alarmed. The enemy soldiers are terrified by the magic user. They want to stop him, but thanks to Jose and the others, they're incapable of reaching Walm. The field burns with Walm expending more of his flames. Jose urges Noor and Burrito to keep their distance from their friend, or else they'll all get caught in his flames. The royal guard can't believe how far this man is willing to go. Declaring that he'll kill Walm here and now, he rides forth for another swing. The opportune moment arrives, but the moment the royal guard swings his sword, his weapon is literally sliced off by the molten flames. Engulfed by the incinerating flames, the royal guard questions what's going on. Those same flames turned into a bluish hue and became even more intense than regular fire magic. Walm decimates his opponent to ashes, leaving everything around him burning. Back at the Fious stronghold, Lord Fious receives important news that things have gone south on them. One of the council members suggests that they join the main battalion, or else the general is at risk of being killed, which will destroy the army as a whole. Pissed off, Lord Fious refuses to seize control of his stronghold and runs away like a coward. Suddenly, one of the injured soldiers comes to inform him that their anti-cavalry fences have been destroyed. Lord Fious quickly realizes just how bad things have gotten, while his men urge him to get moving. When the ruler steps outside, he sees everything engulfed in blue flames. The sight of these blue flames remind him of a conversation he had with one of his ministers, who informed him that blue fire represented a gateway to hell. If it's here, then that signifies death is lingering close by. An overwhelmed Fious sweats profusely, observing the ignis fatuus or the blue flames. Ahead of him is the man responsible for opening the gates of hell and decorating the enemy soldiers with death. Walm stares at him, before confessing that his next attack will be aimed at the commanding general. Lord Fious comes to grapple with the idea that this guy is a normal soldier, and yet he has the ego to speak down to the commander of both the expedition forces. Walm takes a moment to question if he's dealing with the real Fious or if this is some kind of duplicate. Ultimately, he admits that it's the real commanding general and orders him to surrender. Walm could easily kill this man right away, but he doesn't have any orders to radically do such a thing. In circumstances like these, it's much more beneficial to hold enemy superiors as captives. Lord Fious replies that he's capable of fighting with his arms, and thus he wields a sword for his own pride. He can see that his men are fighting for his cause, and because of that, he refuses to surrender. Fious unsheathes his blade, and the battle begins. Walm dodges his first attack and returns a wide swing with his weapon. He contemplates the words of the commanding general and realizes that if he hadn't responded to that attack properly just now, he would have received a fatal wound. Previously, Walm suspected that the commanding general merely had his title because of his royal status, but he admits that Fious is extremely powerful. In any ordinary circumstance, Walm would have the advantage, but right now he's fatigued from all the running and the exhaustion of his mina. No skills or magic are left at his disposal, which makes him wonder how he should defeat this guy. In the middle of his contemplation, Fious comes flying with a sword swing aimed at Walm's head. Luckily, he's able to evade just in time, and using this opening, he tries to pierce the commander with a strike of his own. That doesn't go too well for him, because Fious ends up blocking the attack, frustrating Walm that he can't expose any weak spots here. The Royal Swordmaster speed blitzes our protagonist and slices off his arm, causing him to gush out a pool of blood. Things have gone even worse than before, and Fious capitalizes on this opportunity to aim for another attack. However, Walm decides to launch his axe right at the Swordmaster, stopping his attack and forcing him to deflect it. Initially, Lord Fious thought that his opponent had gone insane to throw his weapon, but the moment he turns to gaze at Walm, this guy is already in his face. The fight is over as Walm slashes his neck with his reserve sword. Lord Fious topples to the ground. With what's left of him, he admits his defeat, and despite that, believes strongly in the victory of his own kingdom. In response, Walm glares at him before roaring at the horizon of Commander Fious' defeat. With that announcement, the soldiers of the Fious stronghold make their escape, but it's futile as the High Cirque squads chase after them to hunt them down. Meanwhile, an exhausted Walm sees one of the enemy soldiers coming to check on Lord Fious' health. This person quickly takes his blade and chops his own head off, a sight that leaves Walm shocked. After a while, the body is properly inspected and they come to verify that it is indeed Winston Fious. The cavalryman asks about Walm's squad and learns that he's from the duel group. Commander Jeff is proud of him and assures him that he'll be rewarded properly for it, though he recommends he stay alive until then. Jose also comes around to check on Walm's state, who admits that he's feeling extremely tired. Walm worriedly asks about the others and discovers that they're all doing okay too. Squad leader Duel comes up looking all bashed in. He's panting heavy breaths and despite his wounds, still boasts the courage to fight. The battle continues, but the scene leaves Walm experiencing dread. Victory was now assured and the High Cirque Empire had won over both the Fious and Mired armies. Meanwhile, things are looking shaky in the Mired headquarters. Their leader, Youth Mired, is frightened to learn of Fious' death. He's shivering in fear, questioning why he bothered to betray his own motherland when Lord Fious couldn't even survive on his own. Youth Mired sinks in despair, apologizing to his daughter for being a fool. He knows that there's no choice left but to surrender. But even that choice is robbed of his control as one of his men is slaughtered before his eyes. Entering the tent are the enemy soldiers. They've all come here to apprehend the man responsible for betraying his country. In his final moments, Youth Mired is confronted with the consequences of his actions. He reflects what he could have done differently, though his reflection is ultimately meaningless as he is executed soon after. The defeat of the Allied forces led to the High Cirque army advancing to Edinburgh, the capital of Mired. Even though Walm and his squad were meant to preserve order in the capital, he feels incredibly out of place just being here. Burrito wonders how Duel managed to pull the strings to have them invited to a large residence. Jose doesn't understand it either and fails to comprehend how this place isn't a jail. The commander hears their banter loud and clear and understands that from their point of view, Duel has made a mistake. Duel wonders if this is all just a show to reward their squad. After all, Walm remembers Commander Jeff stating the same thing on the battlefield, so he thinks it's the case too. Well, they're served tea. Jose doesn't know how to drink it properly, and in an effort to appear good-mannered in front of everyone, these guys do their absolute best to drink tea quietly. As for Walm, he never could have anticipated coming across a good blend of tea. The thing is, Walm doesn't comprehend the manners of this world, but he is well-versed in the modern world and its customs. So when he drinks it, he appears elegant and polite. The tea is so good because he hasn't had a chance to experience it ever since he came up in this world. Watching him drink with elegance makes his friends wonder if this guy is really a farmer at this point. The door opens and an old man steps in, observing that they're all having fun. He urges them to take their seats, emphasizing that they'll be having a conversation. Walm takes one look at the man and realizes that he's laying his eyes on a war hero known as Commander Belga. Belga drinks his tea and sets it down. He starts off by mentioning how astonished he was after discovering that Commander Duel's squad was single-handedly responsible for defeating the commanding general. Belga thinks they've all surpassed him with this achievement and thus wants to reward them for their efforts. Duel expresses politeness and surprises his subordinates. The war hero addresses him and acknowledges Belga's fierce participation in the battle. Duel thanks him for it, which leads Belga to get to his main subject of interest, Walm. He addresses the young man's track record, pointing out that Walm experienced battles near the border after joining the battalion. He became the ultimate weapon for his squad leader, and even managed to learn magic from Willat. Finally, he commanded the use of the Ignis Fatuus blue flames. In him shines a brimming talent unlike anyone else. In response, Walm thanks Belga for his remarks. The commander explains that he had only seen the blue flames once in his life, and ever since then, he's been thanking God that a soldier of High Cirque came to possess such a power. The blue flames are terrifying beyond one's imagination, and any hero who possessed them in the past was well known for this ability. Walm is now one of those people. Saying this, Belga orders Lynette to bring the prized object. It's revealed to be an Oni mask that was originally worn by a party of otherworlders who fought against the Three Nations. The mask is coveted in history, but one thing is for certain. The wielder of the mask in the past was capable of using the blue flames. Belga urges Walm to try it on, so he does exactly that by wearing it. But the sensation of wearing the mask feels odd to him, as if Walm is being dragged to the sentiments of his original world. The commander jokingly states that now all of his enemies will quiver in fear after seeing it in combat. Walm expresses his thanks, and right as he removes the mask from his face, the thing starts levitating from his grasp. Duel and the rest of his squad are terrified because they're thinking the mask is possessed or something. While they're out here losing their marbles, Belga laughs uncontrollably, incapable of stopping himself from the stomachache he got from their reactions. Belga finally reveals that the mask appears to like its new owner. Due to its unordinary nature, it is capable of syncing with one's emotions. The good thing is that it hasn't tried to harm Walm yet, which shows that it likes him. In this world, Belga highlights that certain weapons possess a will of their own, and this mask specifically is known for being stubborn in its taste. At least now it has found a good owner to fit its power. After the meeting, Duel and his squad are walking in the hall, when Jose wonders how Walm is going to use the mask. The soldier intends to keep the mask as a cherished gift from Belga. Nor is creeped the hell out and recommends throwing it away, leaving the rest of the squad to collectively scold her for her dumb opinion. With the mask in his possession, Walm internalizes his thoughts. He doesn't feel weird that a weapon has its own will, especially not when he himself has experienced reincarnation in another world. Later that day, Nor sees a pile of dead bodies of the Mired soldiers and questions why they're here. Apparently, it's because the soldiers figured that this would be the safest place for them to hide. In the end, it doesn't matter how powerful the Mired forces were, because it only took them a few battles to crumble. This kind of idea is lost on Walm, who doesn't comprehend why people try so hard to acquire wealth. Duel adds that it's the mark of ungrateful people who went too far. They come to learn that the Mired Lord had already been killed before their forces stepped inside the capital. It's regrettable that the city didn't improve even a tiny percentage. Well, at its current, Walm points out the rising death toll. His group is told to maintain order, and an aspect of that job is to find every last one of those Mired soldiers hiding in the city. They must also locate the people breaking martial law and looting around for a smoother operation. On the streets, one man is being dragged as he helplessly chants that he's not a soldier. The men seizing him suspect him to be one, stating that he's got a fresh wound on him, so it must be recent. They refuse to believe his testimony and figure that he'll do well in labor as punishment. Watching the scene from afar, Walm begins to question if it's worthwhile to question people like that. He thinks it's useless as a whole. Burrito and Duel keep on hearing the sounds of people trying to kill each other nearby, hinting that there's some kind of fight going on. When Walm arrives to the scene, he is shocked to discover that those imbecilic soldiers went overboard with their job by invading a house and raping a woman. They also killed her husband. It's a good thing that the troublemaker was seized in time. Immediately, Walm is overwhelmed with anger and questions what will become of the culprit responsible for his disgusting crimes. In ordinary circumstances, such a person would be punished with their head chopped off, but now that they've won the war, they can't do anything more than beat him up. Walm is now officially ticked off, refusing to believe that being whipped is enough for a heinous crime. Duel comes along and assures him that being whipped is quite the torturesome experience. Even experienced soldiers seethe and scream in pain on the first whip. Beyond that, they're begging and their skin is shaved off with every whip. The moment they're about to lose consciousness, the experience resets them with another whip, repeating it all over again. The detained culprit hears all of this and practically starts shivering at the realization of what's about to happen to him. Duel looks at him with merciless eyes while Commander Jeff warns the rest of the soldiers to be wary of the same punishment. Grabbing his shoulder, Duel tries to comfort Walm and leaves. Later that night, our protagonist is smoking a cigarette all alone. His exhaustion from the day is catching up on him, and a sleep spell nearly takes him out, when suddenly he hears someone nearby. Getting up, Walm looks around, asking who's there. He wonders if it's some other High Cirque soldier or if he's dealing with some kind of Mired straggler. Revealing his weapon, he asks a final time for this mysterious person to reveal themselves. Coming out of hiding, the duo apologizes. Walm reminds them that if they're not High Cirque soldiers, then they are restricted from going outside at night. The old man agrees and explains that he's afraid of the city being filled with thieves and bad people. That's why they want to escape to a country nearby, hoping to seek shelter there. One glance at them confirms to Walm that these people are ordinary citizens. Just to be sure, he asks them if they're tied to the military in any way. The old man emphasizes that he is not but used to share experience in a war a decade ago. Walm is suspicious of the old man's words, pointing out that this guy has an extremely fine stature and physique for someone so old. Not to mention, the young lady he has alongside her doesn't seem to be a laborer, which begs the question what she means to him. The old man assures Walm that they're only doing this for their own health, and that his granddaughter here lost her parents. He kept her and raised her on his own, but something about this guy doesn't seem right in Walm's eyes. Tensions rise and it seems like they're about to fight, but then suddenly the granddaughter's tummy growls for food, causing her to become flustered. The whole thing makes Walm erupt in uproarious laughter. He stops and apologizes for his reaction, praising the young lady for her looks. Choosing to be a good man, Walm allows them to go on ahead with their mission. As they're leaving, he stops them again. Walm brought some food with him, and he wants the girl to take it because she's hungry. He even assures them that he's had a rough day and wants to feel less guilty by doing something good for once. Making his intentions clear, Walm promises her that the food isn't poisoned. The young lady takes the jar from him and thanks him with a smile. In the next scene, Walm sees them rowing away on a boat. He wonders if they reacted to him strangely because of the fact that he was one of the invading soldiers in their city. There's no doubt in his mind that he was responsible for killing their family, and his heinous actions can't be forgiven by simply offering someone food to eat. Speaking of the duo, the girl is revealed to be Rita Mired, who is devastated to learn that her family has been slaughtered while she remained helpless to do anything. Her country has been invaded and there's nothing left for her. In this fleeting moment, her grandfather assures Rita that they still had a chance to fight back. But for that to happen, Rita must become stronger and become the beacon of hope for her land. To achieve that, they focus on their current strategy to head towards Celta. 2 months flew by and Commander Dewey seems to have gone crazy. The High Cirque soldiers are mocking the Fious soldiers who are hiding behind their defensive fort. Dewey orders them to sing louder and louder to break the enemy's spirit. Their tactic appears to be working as the enemy soldiers can't bear the noise. This area is dubbed cleared by the commander and he suggests heading back. 2 months right after the siege of the Mired capital, the High Cirque army ventured towards Fious. Thanks to their involvement in assisting Mired using their forces, they had none left to protect their own borders. The High Cirque army understood this weakness, so they began splitting up to target the villages and towns on the border to surrender. The battalion split up into 2 groups, with the first one targeting the inland area while the second one kept the Fious army busy, ensuring that it wouldn't be flanked. Our protagonist is currently part of this second group, which intends to besiege the Reref mine around the border. That leads us to the current state of things, where Dewey and his squad are going around taking control of the mines. Thanks to their oppressive forces, they cornered the Fious soldiers back to their forts, allowing them to stack up on their numbers while also maintaining the high ground. Despite his lust for battle, Commander Dewey understands that it's inefficient to try taking down even one of the forts. That's why they're just launching a harassing campaign to scare the soldiers and break their spirits first, before directly launching an attack and wiping them out. The men on the forts are cursing out the High Cirque soldiers for being barbarians, which only adds to Dewey's entertainment. While this is happening, Walm points out that their objective here is to make the enemy soldiers run out of resources. It's an amusing fight compared to the hell they experienced earlier. 2 weeks pass just like that, and both parties are still the same. Knowing that there isn't any immediate fighting going on, Dewey instructs his squad to train to keep them busy. Willett and Walm venture into a mine, where the magic user criticizes Walm for being a liability when it comes to battle. He runs the risk of harming his own allies because his usage of the blue flames is out of the ordinary. In the worst-case scenario, Walm could potentially kill his own platoon, which is why Willett has brought him to an abandoned mine to train him. Moments later, the soldier visualizes an image of fire and unleashes the blue flames. While they're training inside, Jose and the others are busy sword fighting and sparring against each other to keep busy. Dewey defeats both Burrito and Nor at the same time. Burrito tries to get back up, but he sneezes so loud that Nor makes fun of him for it. Annoyed, he declares that he'll kill them all. But in the end, the guy gets bitch slapped across the face by his captain and gets knocked out. Again, Burrito ends up being clowned by everyone. A few days passed, and at last, Walm is beginning to see some progress in his ability to control the blue flames. However, an even bigger problem has replaced the old one. Right now, his maximum capacity to use the Ignis Fatuus is a pathetic 30-second duration before his body reaches its limit. If he takes the risk of using it for 40 seconds, he'll run out of mana, rendering his skills unusable. He acknowledges an even bigger risk of death if the flames are used for too long. Jose knocks Walm out of his daydream and asks if he's finished already, to which he responds by agreeing that he can't go on any longer without collapsing. He came here to check on the guy because he still hadn't come out of the training grounds. But Walm points out that Jose actually came for the delicious chicken instead. It's a bit disappointing to Walm that they're using his ability to heat up food. But then again, Jose is a good cook, so it evens out the effort for both of them. Outside, they let loose the delicious smell of chicken to reach all the way to the defensive fort. This is one other psychological plan to break their enemy's fighting spirit. Walm states that at the end of the day, people wanted to eat as much as they could. Jose shares his opinion that good food should always be a requirement on the battlefield, and he tosses a piece of chicken to him. Walm takes a bite and internalizes how delicious it is. However, he denies it in front of Jose and says that he's only eating because using the blue flames completely exhausted his body. As they're setting up camps for the night, Jose remarks that their days of living this kind of lifestyle are numbered. Confused, Walm asks him what he implies. Jose takes a moment to think and explains that it's strange how the number of fleeing soldiers is increasing day by day. It's like they're incapable of having the will to fight anymore, so they're just surrendering everything. Walm thinks it must be thanks to the harassing campaign, and while Jose agrees, he argues that the smell of his chicken must also be a contributing factor in their enemy's demise. Walm is baffled by his serious remark, causing his friend to roar in laughter. Jose decides to get serious and explains what he really means. For an ordinary Fious soldier, these walls are cages. They're surrounded by enemy forces, and there is the never-ending sound of battle raging outside. Then there's the fact that they need to manage their resources to eat and survive, while their enemies are celebrating with delicious feasts just outside. All in all, Jose thinks that it's going to be impossible for the Fious soldiers to resist the pressure, and inevitably their miserable spirits will be shattered. Hearing his take, Walm is starting to feel guilty all of a sudden. However, Jose thinks this lifestyle will soon come to an end, so it's best to enjoy it while they still can. Despite his words, Walm finds it to be a meaningful learning experience and intends to observe more around him. 3 days passed by, resulting in a massive explosion of blue flames, obliterating the enemy fort. To their shock, the Fious soldiers are incapable of comprehending how the High Cirque army invaded inside. While they're chaotically searching for the invaders in an effort to extinguish the blue flames, Walm is already there waiting for them, with the singular goal of killing them all. The tactician gathers everyone inside the tent and lays out the full picture before the attack begins. The mine fort ahead is a nightmare to breach. Its geographical position alone makes it difficult, and on top of that, it is heavily fortified. The terrain surrounding it is so narrow that sending in large numbers of soldiers is simply not an option, which rules out any kind of overwhelming force strategy. So the plan shifts to something more surgical. Walm gets assigned as the key player in a night raid, leading a small unit that will use Ignis Fatuus to throw the entire fort into chaos from the inside. A wind element magic user joins him for this, and together their combined abilities are meant to create enough disorder for the 2nd Battalion to sweep in and take the fort clean. The tactician wraps up the briefing by opening the floor for questions. Walm is quietly devastated. The mission basically revolves around him, and he starts to wonder if they simply see him as some kind of pyromaniac. But refusing orders is not something he can do, so he keeps it to himself. When night falls, Walm and his unit pull on black cloaks and begin crawling through the darkness toward one of the fort's outer walls. The goal is straightforward: get inside and punch open enough of an entry point for their allies to storm through. Walm puts on his Oni mask and steadies himself. As the group dashes toward the wall, his mind drifts back to his training sessions with Willard, because Walm carries a rare high affinity with both fire and wind elements. Willard had taken the time to teach him how to channel wind magic into his legs and jump far beyond normal limits. That technique comes into use right away. The group uses it to vault over the wall and land directly on a night patrol. One of the soldiers gets a scream out before Walm takes his head off immediately. 2 more spot what just happened, but the rest of the unit handles them before anything escalates. They push straight for the defensive tower. Inside, a group of soldiers is sitting around a table, completely off guard. Walm already knows stealth is not his strong suit, so he does not even attempt it. He fires Ignis Fatuus directly into the room, and the blue flames swallow the soldiers whole. The fire does not just burn from the outside, it works its way inward, and their screams fill the tower. Walm turns his eyes away. The noise pulls the attention of guards stationed above, who come rushing down to check and walk straight into an explosion that blows out the platform beneath them. They catch fire mid-air and hit the ground 30 feet below. The alarm finally goes off as the fort's soldiers scramble to their posts, but what they find stops them cold. The stone defensive tower is on fire, and stone is not supposed to burn. Before they can process it, arrows start pouring down from above. The high-positioned soldiers who entered with Walm have already taken an elevated spot and are picking off targets below. While Walm catches his breath, one of his teammates rushes over and confirms the area is covered. Enemy soldiers are already moving in from below, so speed matters now. Reinforcements from the other tower could arrive any moment. The hard part is done. Taking this tower was the real obstacle. Holding it until the main force arrives is what comes next. Walm gets ordered to set the connecting passage on fire so no one can cross it. He heads back through the burned section to carry it out, and that is when he walks past the soldiers he incinerated earlier. Their screams replay in his head. He hunches over, guilt tearing through him. The morals and conscience he brought over from his previous life feel completely broken at this point. He thinks back to Edinburgh and realizes again just how much agony Ignis Fatuus inflicts before death actually arrives. He catches himself wondering whether any of this would even hurt if he had simply been born in this world to begin with, but he forces the thought down and moves forward. The passage goes up in blue flames. The fire spreads fast and the enemy soldiers are pushed back immediately. Getting close enough to fight it means getting caught in it, so all they can do is stand and watch their comrades burn. Walm moves through the tower, counting the bodies as he goes. He reaches 31 before his legs give out and he drops to his knees, nearly drained of magic entirely. At least nothing else is coming. He shuts his eyes as the blue flames continue eating through the tower around him. Then something heavy hits the floor. 3 soldiers have pushed through the heat and are now standing right in front of him. They want to know if he is the one behind the fire. They pull out their swords and sarcastically throw their resentment at him. thanking him for all the daily chanting and for making them live with the smell of their own rations day after day. Walm just laughs. He acknowledges them and lets them know that today is where their service ends. The three soldiers spread out the moment they sense Walm might use his Ignis Fatuus, but what they don't realize is that Walm is already running on empty. His magic is nearly gone. Still, they rush him anyway. Walm throws an attack at the soldier with a nose scar, but the guy deflects it without much effort and immediately fires back. Walm dodges and creates some distance, except the soldier with the receding hairline and the mage aren't giving him a second to breathe. The hairline guy charges straight at him while the mage behind him launches a water spell. Walm figures this is where he dies, so he pours everything he has left into Ignis Fatuus and unleashes it on all three of them. The shield-bearing soldier pushes right through the fire and swings at him anyway. Walm barely gets out of the way, but the mage is already sending water bullets flying at him. Walm fires a fireball to knock them out of the air, and the collision floods the entire room with thick mist. He uses the cover to actually study his opponents. The nose-scarred soldier is a body reinforcement type. He channels magic through his physical strength. The receding hairline guy is a fire element user with serious fire resistance built up. The mage is a water user whose whole job is keeping the other two safe from flames. Once Walm pieces this together, he stops stalling and bursts out of the mist, going straight for the hairline soldier with his halberd. The nose-scarred one cuts in immediately to protect him and attacks Walm directly. Walm dodges and counters, but the hit gets blocked, and right behind that, the mage sends another round of water bullets, carefully aimed so they don't hit the nose-scarred soldier who is right on Walm's tail. Walm is genuinely stunned. Their coordination is that tight. Every move he makes, they've already accounted for. He can't find a single opening. It feels like one wrong step sets everything off at once. The nose-scarred soldier attacks again, and this time Walm catches the blade with his halberd and pins it to the floor, then kicks the guy back. The hairline soldier comes from behind, but Walm shoves him back with fire, and it barely does anything. Walm knows the situation is getting bad. His mana is draining fast, and if it hits 0, he isn't getting a clean death, he's getting tortured. So, he makes the call to push Ignis Fatuus past its normal limits, cranking the heat until it overwhelms even the hairline soldier's fire resistance. It works. The man burns. The nose-scarred soldier loses it when he watches his comrade go down and charges at Walm with everything he has. At the same time, the mage fires another barrage of water bullets, but instead of targeting Walm, the water slams into the burning soldier. The mage had prioritized saving his comrade over finishing the fight. Walm notices this and feels something sink in his chest. They genuinely care about each other. But in a fight, that kind of attachment is a weakness. The nose-scarred soldier keeps pressing forward relentlessly, and Walm counters by throwing a small flame right in his face. Even so, the soldier pushes through it and swings for Walm's neck. The sword leaves his hand at the last second, though. His grip gives out because his hands are already badly burned from the earlier fire. He dives for the dropped sword, and that split second of distraction is all Walm needs. He drives his halberd into the man's neck. One left, the mage. He looks scared at first, but when he sees his two comrades lying there, something shifts in him, and he straightens up and takes his stance. Walm locks eyes with him, then catches the mage's expression, flips into shock. He looks down and realizes the nose-scarred soldier he just stabbed is still alive, barely, and has both hands clamped around the halberd, anchoring Walm in place. Walm pulls at the weapon, but it won't move. He punches the soldier, but the man holds on, coughing up blood and refusing to let go. The mage charges with his sword raised. Walm has nothing left to work with. He throws his arm guard up to absorb the swing, but it doesn't fully stop it. The blade misses his neck but carves deep into his shoulder. Walm screams, and that's the moment the dying soldier finally releases the halberd, going slack with a faint smile before he stops moving entirely. The mage is furious. He grinds the embedded sword even deeper into Walm's shoulder. Walm surges forward and tackles him to the ground, knocking the sword loose. Now it's just hands. The mage lands a punch to Walm's stomach, but Walm uses the opening to get both hands around his throat. The mage lifts him and slams him into the floor, but Walm shifts his body weight and locks him into a chokehold from behind. The mage thrashes, kicking, clawing, until he goes limp. Walm releases him, gets up, and then drives his halberd through the mage's chest just to be certain. He sits down and pulls off his mask, finally breathing. All three are dead. What Walm doesn't notice is that the hairline soldier, the one who burned, has gotten back up behind him, sword in hand, already mid-swing. Then an arrow punches through the back of the man's skull, and he drops immediately. One of the soldiers who'd come with Walm is standing there with the shot. Walm acknowledges it, but points out that showing up earlier would have been more useful since he'd nearly been carved apart. The soldier's response is straightforward. Walking into a room on fire wasn't something he was prepared to do. The soldier notices Walm's shoulder is bleeding heavily, so he pulls him outside and props him against a wall, then heads off to find bandages. Walm notices something next to him and points it out. The soldier just tells him to sit tight with his company and leaves. It takes Walm a moment to realize the charred body leaned against the wall beside him is someone he killed. The weight of that settles over him quietly. Down below, the main army finally breaks through the castle gate, and the cheering starts pouring up. The mask beside him begins to vibrate, and Walm can't quite understand how any of these people are finding something to celebrate right now. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Christ, representatives from Liberatoa and Fious have gathered to figure out what to do about High Cirque's rapid expansion before things spiral completely out of control. An old man walks into the room, deep scars carved across his face, completely unbothered by the tension in the air. This is Hugo Evans, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of Liberatoa. He drops into his seat and casually conjures a small flame from his palm. The guards in the room immediately stiffen. Hugo just uses it to light his cigar. He catches their reaction and nudges one of the guards just enough to get under his skin. The guard is clearly furious but keeps it together and says nothing. Hugo leans back and starts sizing up everyone else at the table. At the head sits King Chest Christ of the Kingdom of Christ, who is hosting this whole gathering. Next to him is King Barristan Fious of the Fious Kingdom, the same kingdom currently being torn apart by the High Cirque army. His eyes still carry that hard, undefeated look of someone who hasn't accepted losing yet. Part of that might be personal. Walm killed his brother after all. When Hugo turns to his left, a young woman catches his eye immediately. She's strikingly beautiful and he doesn't recognize her, so he asks who she is. She introduces herself as Rita Mired, the very girl Walm spared not long ago. The story then shifts back 3 weeks to the fall of the fort at Reef and Mine. Walm is inside the base while a healing mage finishes examining him and clears him to get back on his feet. Around that same time, the remaining enemy soldiers had retreated deep into the mines after losing stronghold after stronghold. On paper, they had enough supplies and manpower to hold out, but endless sieges combined with relentless psychological pressure had hollowed out whatever will to fight they had left. The pattern is the same across every nearby castle and fort. What ultimately breaks them is a single warning from the High Cirque army: surrender immediately or everyone dies. Soldiers and civilians without exception. That's all it takes. Walm gets up and heads back to find his squad. On the way, he passes rows of captured enemy soldiers. Their faces are vacant, eyes completely empty, men who have nothing left in them. Walm feels something close to pity for a moment, then lets it go and keeps walking. He runs into Jose first, who greets him with a grin and points out how good he looks. Walm rolls his shoulder and acknowledges that healing magic is genuinely remarkable. Injuries that would normally take months to recover from are completely gone in just 2 weeks. Then Noah comes over, and Walm immediately notices how rough she looks and brings it up. She slumps and fills him in. After he went down, their squad got sent to take the castle, and somewhere in all of that, something happened to Burrito. Right on cue, a sluggish figure shuffles over. It's Burrito. Walm takes one look at him and immediately starts laughing. The mohawk is gone. Burrito looks absolutely gutted and explains that an enemy mage is responsible. Jose can barely hold it together and points out that Burrito should consider himself lucky the rest of him is still attached. Noah claps enthusiastically like it's the finale of something. Off to the side, Walm spots Willert sitting quietly on his own. The two exchange a simple nod. Everyone's accounted for, so Walm asks about their squad leader, Duel. Jose explains that Duel got pulled away by the platoon commander, the mines still aren't fully secured, and based on how the leading troops are moving, High Cirque looks like it's preparing to push deeper into Fious territory. Back in the Kingdom of Christ, the meeting picks back up. Rita is now standing before the room as the representative of the Mere Duché, a claim that lands with immediate skepticism, especially from Hugo. As far as he's concerned, Mired is already a dead nation. Its cities are gone, its people displaced. The idea of it still having a representative strikes him as almost absurd. Rita doesn't flinch. She acknowledges that most of Mard's territory is lost, but one piece remains: the land of Serta. Serta sits surrounded by a massive lake, rich in fish and lined with active trade routes. It used to be a thriving economic center, but for a long time it has been completely off limits. A lake dragon had settled there, a creature sitting at the very top of the monster hierarchy. Even as a subspecies of dragon, it carried enough power that even the High-Cirque Empire had no interest in provoking it. That dragon is now dead. The room goes quiet. Even Hugo, who always has something cutting to say, has nothing. 6 months ago, this would have been unthinkable until one man made it happen. A fire element user who produced enough heat to bring down a dragon, finishing it with a single holy strike. His name is Akima Yuto, one of the 3 heroes of Christ and one of the visitors from another world. On the other side, a group of High-Cirque soldiers are having the time of their lives. They're laughing about how fortunate they are to be part of this invasion. It's basically handed them the freedom to take whatever they want and do whatever they please. With the competent Mired soldiers already wiped out, the resistance left in the area is barely worth calling resistance. One of them crouches near a corpse and starts unbuckling his pants. Another soldier stops him and reminds him they have orders to move to the next village. The first one just laughs it off, making a crude comment about the women here being too good to pass up. The rest find it hilarious. Then a shadow falls over them. A tower crumbles and collapses directly onto several of them, burying them under the debris. Dust and screaming fill the air. Before anyone can figure out what's happening, one soldier yells that they're under attack and gets split open before he finishes the sentence. Panic takes over immediately. The survivors try to pull back and realize they're already surrounded. When the dust settles enough to see, their attackers aren't Mired soldiers. They're troops from the kingdom of Christ. One soldier breaks into a full sprint, trying to escape and gets cut cleanly in half. The rest drop everything they've looted and flee the burning village entirely. At the edge of the road, a single man is standing directly in their path. He calmly informs them to surrender. The High-Cirque soldiers draw their weapons anyway, completely unaware of what they're dealing with. A blazing, magical aura radiating off him that burns brighter than actual fire. That night, 3 full Saria battalions of the High-Cirque army are wiped out. Over 700 soldiers don't come back. Far away from any of that, Jose is completely thrown off by a sudden order to retreat. It makes no sense to him. They were supposed to be pushing further into Fious territory, not pulling back. Even Duel, their squad leader, admits he couldn't wrap his head around it either when it first came down. When he pressed the War Council for an explanation, what he got back left him speechless. The kingdoms of Fious and Christ, the nation of Libertoa, and whatever remains of Mired have all joined forces against High-Cirque. The squad goes quiet. Everyone understands what that means. Every nation in the northern archipelago is now their enemy. Burrito looking pale brings up the number that's sitting in everyone's head. The High-Cirque forces deployed in Fious total around 16,000, and counting the 2 battalions stationed at Edinburgh brings it to roughly 24,000. Duel, visibly strained, delivers the last piece of information. The combined enemy force exceeds 60,000. Meanwhile, back in Chrysia, the royal meeting is still going. The King of Christ puts forward the idea of a 4-nation alliance, a formal pact built on both military and economic cooperation, with the Lake of Serta designated as the Central Economic Zone. The room reacts with mixed energy. Hugo finds the whole political maneuvering genuinely amusing and laughs out loud, which clearly unsettles Rita. He carries on for a moment, entertained by what kind of chaos this alliance could potentially stir up, before the sharp looks from everyone around him finally get him to stop. By the end of it, every representative at the table has agreed. The 4-nation alliance is officially established. Back at the Reref mines, Duel's squad is holding their position at the fort. The dynamic has completely flipped. High-Cirque, which had been advancing this whole time, is now pulling back. The retreat destination is the Sarajevo fortress, where the decisive battle is expected to happen. Whether they win with the men and supplies they've gathered is uncertain, but they haven't lost yet either. For now, their job is to hold the mines long enough to cover the withdrawal of Allied forces from inside Fious territory. Nobody in the squad is thrilled about it, but facing 60,000 soldiers isn't something they're equipped to do. Even Walm, who has barely survived the last several fights, understands there's no other option here. Duel makes clear they aren't abandoning the mine without making it count, and moments later explosions start going off through the tunnels. High-Cirque is collapsing the mines on the way out so the enemy can't make use of them. Duel also passes along that command has ordered all prisoners of war to be executed. Walm's expression shifts immediately. Duel himself disagrees with the call. His thinking is that it would make far more sense to put the captives to work carrying supplies during the retreat rather than killing them for nothing. But neither of them has any real say in the matter, and Walm knows it. He sighs and moves on. Then the battle begins. Libertoa forces launch their assault on the walls, throwing up ladders and climbing. Walm shouts for the defenders to keep them off. Jose rushes to shove a ladder away while Walm hurls a rock that shatters another one entirely, sending the soldiers on it screaming down to the ground. The assault keeps intensifying. Duel picks up a large stone and throws it hard enough that it caves in an armored soldier's helmet and skull entirely. The platoon commander shouts that the left flank is breaking and sends Walm over to reinforce it. Walm sprints to the left wing and finds the defenders struggling against enemy mages. Before doing anything, he warns the soldiers around him to clear out. They recognize what's coming and scatter. Walm settles onto the ledge and starts pulling his mana together. The enemy spots him, but by the time they do, it's already too late. He releases Ignis Fatuus. Pale flames pour across the battlefield and swallow everything in range. The Libertoa soldiers scream as the fire wraps around them and burns straight through their armor and shields. Walm watches from above without any visible reaction. The smell of burning flesh doesn't affect him anymore. It stopped bothering him a while ago. When the flames die out, he climbs down from the ledge. The soldiers nearby are quietly processing what they just witnessed, but none of them say anything against it. Instead, they come over and thank him for holding the position, openly relieved that he's on their side. Walm finds it hard to believe they mean it, but they clearly do, and then they turn back to treating the wounded and restocking. Shortly after, Jose calls over to him. Duel's squad is being assembled for the next operation, and Jose mentions that Ignis Fatuus will be going out again. Walm just nods. There's nothing left to say about it. He's already used to it. On the other side, the Libertoa forces are watching the fort and waiting for the right window to move. Their commander's plan is to punch through High Cirque's defenses and crack open their line while the main army is still tied up elsewhere. But the fear sitting in his men is real and nobody is hiding it. Every single one of them remembers what Walm's Ignis Fatuus did last time, an otherworldly pale fire that swallowed entire formations whole. Even their previous company commander died in it. The current commander pushes that thought down, steadies himself, and gives the order to get ready. His men confirm they're set and waiting on his word. Back at the fort, Walm and Jose spot the movement from a distance and get into position. As the Libertoa soldiers close in, they're doing everything they can think of to protect themselves from the fire they know is coming. Soaking themselves in water, coating their bodies in mud. It helps their nerves exactly zero. Even the commander feels it. Every instinct he has is screaming at him to turn back, but the memory of the last defeat won't let him. He swallows the fear and signals the charge. The Libertoa forces rush the fort and immediately run into a wall of arrows raining down from above. The commander orders everyone to tuck under the walls until the barrage stops. When it does, destructive magic follows right behind it. Even through all of that, the soldiers push forward, reach the base of the walls, and get their ladders up. The commander surveys the field and notices, with some actual relief, that the casualties aren't as bad as he feared. His men are already climbing. For the first time, taking this fort feels genuinely possible. Then the walls erupt in blue fire. Ignis Fatuus tears across the upper walls and consumes everything on them. Soldiers, stone, wood. The commander immediately calls the retreat back to the trenches. The soldiers caught in it are rolling in the dirt trying to put themselves out. Their screaming barely audible over the roar of the fire eating through the fort's own structure. The commander stares at it and then something clicks. High Cirque just set fire to their own corridors. They torch their own defenses deliberately. He curses, realizes what's actually happening, and shouts new orders. The men are confused, but they listen. Ladders go back up, and they climb again. When they reach the top this time, the corridor is completely empty. The commander clenches his fist and kicks a fallen helmet out of the way. The whole picture is painfully clear now. High Cirque has been withdrawing this entire time. While Liberto was bleeding to take this fort, the enemy was using the chaos as cover to pull out, burning everything behind them so it couldn't be used against them. He closes his eyes for a moment, then he pulls himself together and orders the first platoon to deal with the remaining fires, while the second and third hold guard. The scouts he'd sent ahead returned shortly after with the final piece of bad news. High Cirque has destroyed the entire military road, leading deeper into Fious territory. Every resource and every life spent on this assault, and the enemy just walked away from it on their own terms. The commander stands in the smoldering ruins and quietly wonders whether any of this war against High Cirque is actually accomplishing anything. Meanwhile, Walm's battalion is already in the middle of their retreat through a small village. High Cirque soldiers are tearing down houses and dumping the rubble across roads to slow down whoever comes after them. Walm is hauling boulders onto the main path, while others snap wooden pillars and jam them halfway into the ground as crude barriers. The exhaustion is physical now. His legs are unsteady, his vision keeps going soft at the edges, and he's close to dropping. Then the platoon commander shows up with the word that Libertoa forces are closing in, and it's time to go. Everyone grabs their weapons and supplies and moves. Jose shouts at Walm to keep up, and Willard tosses him a water pouch. Walm catches it, thanks him quickly, and keeps moving. At the back of the group, Duel does a final sweep to make sure nobody is being left behind. Once he's sure everyone is accounted for, he gives the order to move out. As the battalion pulls away, he takes one last look at the smoke hanging over the horizon, a quiet acknowledgement that their time at the mines is over. The next fight is at Sarvo Fortress. The Four-Nation Alliance has been making steady progress since the campaign began, but the High Cirque army has been anything but sloppy in how it falls back. Jeff's cavalry battalion has been hitting Christ forces with constant raids while other units use magic to bring down mountains, collapse bridges, and tear apart roads. These tactics are brutal, and they work. The Alliance's advance stalls completely at Ref and Mine, and that delay is exactly what High Cirque needs to regroup and set up for the decisive engagement at Sarvo Fortress. Over at the Fious military camp, things are desperate. A soldier is kneeling over his badly wounded friend, pressing on the injury and pleading for any mage who can help. But every mage in camp has already burned through their magic for the day and has nothing left to give. The soldier watches his friend fade and has no idea what to do, until a Christ soldier appears and gestures for him to follow. They carry the wounded man to a tent under heavy guard, leave their weapons outside, and go in. Inside, it's calm. The patients already there are resting without any visible life-threatening injuries. A young woman kneels beside the newly arrived soldier and holds her hands over his arm, which is nearly completely severed. In seconds, the bones, joints, veins, and tissue rebuild themselves completely. The watching soldier can't process what he just saw. Every person brought to this tent has walked out alive. He breaks down in tears, thanking her. This is Sugimoto Ayane, one of Chris's 3 legendary heroes. The arm she just healed looks like it was never touched. Her assistant Maya steps in to tell her it's time for a break, and Ayane thanks her genuinely. Maya's support is a big part of what allows someone as inexperienced as Ayane to handle this volume of patients. Maya pushes back on the self-deprecation and tells her to stop underselling herself. She also passes along that Ayane's companions are nearby. They just drove off Jeff's cavalry battalion, and the allied knights and soldiers around them are practically celebrating on their behalf. Ayane lets herself smile at that. After wrapping up in the tent, Ayane steps outside and finds Makoto and Yuto coming back from the war council. Makoto is still grumbling about how difficult Jeff's cavalry was to deal with. Their speed and coordination pushed even the best soldiers to their limits. Maya checks whether they've eaten, finds out they haven't, and informs them that a noble they rescued earlier donated a substantial spread of food. Soft white bread, cheese, sausages, the works. All 3 of them light up immediately and pile onto Maya in a hug. Chris's 3 heroes are visitors from another world, all of them from Japan. Asama Yuto, who killed the lake dragon, fights with holy and light-based attacks. Isaki Makoto is a prodigious mage who can use all 4 elemental magics, and Sugimoto Ayane heals any wound instantly without chant or ritual. They're still young, barely more than children, but their abilities sit in a completely different category from any ordinary soldier. Back on the road, Duel's squad is marching steadily towards Sarvo Fortress. Walm eats his rations and keeps pace with everyone else, completely unaware that a collision between people like him and people like them is already getting closer. The Luria battalion moves through what used to be living, breathing villages, collapsed bridges, burned-out homes on both sides of the path, nothing left worth saving. As they get closer to their destination, Walm looks up and the sheer size of it stops him for a moment. Sarvo Fortress. It sits locked between steep mountains right at the border of demon territory, which means there's no going around it. Anyone moving through this region has to deal with it directly. It's the kind of position that should be nearly impossible to take. And yet, High Cirque took it in 2 days during the invasion of Fious. The reason isn't complicated. After the Battle of Edinburgh, Mired simply didn't have enough soldiers left to hold it. When the battalion walks inside, the number of soldiers already packed into the fortress is staggering. It feels like the entire army converged on this one place. Duel takes a quiet look around and finds some comfort in the fact that at least his men aren't the only ones going hungry. The squad settles in and eats whatever they have. There's grumbling about the tight space and the terrible rations, but the general agreement is that a packed fortress beats standing exposed on an open battlefield. Burrito makes his feelings about the food very clear, and Noah points out that when you're hungry enough, you stop having opinions about taste. Walm sits slightly away from the noise, quieter than usual. While everyone else gnaws on raw potatoes, he's focused on the one in his hand. He keeps his body angled to block the view. channels a small, carefully controlled thread of magic into his palm, and lets the heat work through the potato until the skin starts to crisp. He's being deliberate about keeping it subtle. The smell of it baking drifts out anyway. He hesitates, then takes a bite. It's simple, but it's warm and actually good. A tiny luxury that feels completely out of place in the middle of all this. It doesn't stay quiet for long. Someone calls his name. His stomach drops and he goes still for a second, already mentally kicking himself. He turns around and finds Willart standing there holding a cup of water with a potato sitting in it. Willart's expression says everything without him having to open his mouth. His mana is tapped out and he wants Walm to handle it. Walm reads it immediately. His secret stays safe, but it's going to cost him. He agrees on the condition that Willart covers his water duty for the day. Willart clicks his tongue but takes the deal. Walm conjures just enough Ignis Fatuus to boil the potato and hands it back. Willart bites into it with obvious satisfaction, and the smell of it carries through the air. That smell is the problem. Duel catches it almost immediately and asks Willart what he's eating. Willart tries to play it casual. Walm's pulse picks up. Then Jose, with zero hesitation, points out that he watched Walm hand something to Willart. Walm tries to redirect and deny, but Duel just looks at him and asks if he can really cook while on the move. Jose puts a hand on Walm's shoulder and makes the appeal. Everyone has been marching for days without a single warm meal. Burrito and Noah pile on immediately, pointing out that even just a boiled potato would do something for morale. Walm holds out for about 3 seconds before giving in. He sighs, tells them to take his gear, and gets to work. He walks with a pot held over a steady flame, salted water and potatoes boiling inside. The warm smell spreads through the fortress and starts drawing attention from soldiers walking past. It doesn't take long before a trio known around the squad as the Three Idiots, Linus, Divert, and Danfon, wander over and start ribbing him about being a walking kitchen, offering to introduce him to a woman in exchange for getting their potatoes cooked too. More soldiers follow behind them, each clutching their own potatoes. Jose immediately sees the opportunity, steps in front of the growing line, and announces the price of 1 copper coin per boiled potato. The soldiers don't even argue. They're just glad something warm exists. Walm glances at Burrito and Noah, eating with actual smiles on their faces, and feels something settle in him briefly. Something close to calm. It doesn't last. Jose turns to Noah and asks about her hunting experience. She mentions that her grandfather used to hunt in the forest, and Jose's face immediately lights up with what is clearly another terrible idea. He pitches it to Walm on the spot. A mobile cooking operation? Walking chicken soup? They'd make a fortune. Walm's patience runs out. Without a word, he lets a burst of Ignis Fatuus loose right under Jose's feet. Jose jumps back, yelling at him to pull it back before it burns through the floor. The soldiers nearby split between laughing and complaining about their scorched potatoes. Noah just chuckles watching the whole thing, quietly noting to herself that the squad somehow manages to stay ridiculous even here. That night, they gather around a campfire, drinking and taking whatever comfort they can find before what's coming. Walm breaks the quiet and asks Jose whether it's confirmed that the enemy has already made contact with their advance party. He's heard the real battle kicks off in 3 or 4 days. Jose confirms it, and his tone is different now. The enemy force is over 50,000. He stares into the fire and says quietly that this fortress is going to be buried under bodies before it's over. That lands heavily. Walm looks down at the ground and says nothing, just listening to the fire crack. Somewhere in that silence he hopes, without saying it out loud, that none of his squad ends up in that count. Then a soldier somewhere bangs on a pot and calls everyone to dinner. Jose gets up grinning and calls it their last supper, arriving ahead of schedule. Walm stands too and tells him to wash his hands before his mother comes after him. The laughter breaks the tension open, and for a stretch of time they just eat and drink under 2 moons, hanging above the fortress walls. Later the camp goes quiet and Walm ends up sitting alone at the rampart, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. He exhales and stares up at the sky. Jose drifts over and asks what's weighing on him. Walm admits he's been turning over the same question. How long does this war actually go on? Jose doesn't have a deep answer for it. He says simply that it ends when they win, but Walm has been watching how this works. High Cirque wins, takes land, and the new land brings new enemies and another war. Victory just extends the chain. That's how they ended up fighting 4 nations simultaneously. In a world where losing means dying, Walm sits with the question that doesn't have a clean answer. If the war never actually ends, if every fight just leads to the next one, what is he supposed to do with that? Jose tells him not to go soft right before the big one. The enemy has the numbers, but High Cirque has the terrain and the fortifications. It's not a guaranteed loss. Walm nods and lets it go. Jose lies down beside him and they sit without talking, drinking under the pale light of the moons. Walm takes a sip of fruit wine and pulls a face at how sour it is. Jose laughs. It's a small throwaway moment, the kind that disappears the second it's over, shared between two war buddies. Several days have passed and the Ligurian battalion of the Hycerc Imperial Army stands fully prepared on the battlefield. Across from them, the Christ Royal Army joins forces with the Razan Knight Order and begins advancing. Because both sides are ready, the fight starts without delay. The Klashuk units strike first, releasing a heavy wave of magic that crashes into the enemy lines, blasting through both soldiers and crystal defenses. In response, the Knight Order pushes their chanting to its peak, which leads to massive earth golems rising from the ground. These creatures move forward like living fortresses, shaking the battlefield with every step. As the fight intensifies, bodies begin piling up quickly. Jose watches the scene and quietly reflects that the battlefield now resembles a graveyard meant for soldiers. The enemy does not slow down despite the losses. They continue charging forward, even climbing over fallen allies just to push ahead. Nor reacts by throwing a stone that hits one of the attackers directly in the face, forcing him back. Because the man is left exposed, Duel follows up immediately by hurling a heavy log that crashes down on him before he can recover. While this section manages to hold its ground, Walm notices that a nearby bastion is struggling. The defenders there are losing control, which creates a risk of collapse if nothing changes. Duel quickly responds to this by instructing Walm to prepare a fireball. As Walm begins gathering flames in his palm, someone calls out to him. A messenger arrives, and this sudden interruption creates a sense of unease. Jose tries to lighten the mood by hinting at some unexpected assignment, but Walm remains serious and moves to meet the messenger. The report confirms his concern. The enemy is close to breaking through the right side of the rear line. Because of this threat, the commander has ordered Walm to stop their advance using Ignis Fatuus. Walm reacts with slight frustration since this task once again involves dealing with overwhelming firepower, and Jose adds a remark that makes it sound more destructive than controlled. Even so, the urgency leaves no room for delay. Guided by the messenger, Walm rushes toward the rear. When he arrives, the situation appears worse than expected. The defenders are exhausted, and their formation is already starting to collapse under continuous pressure. Below the slope, enemy forces gather in large numbers, focusing everything on a single breach point. If that position falls, the entire bastion will follow, shifting the battle in the enemy's favor. Understanding the risk, Walm immediately prepares to act. He takes 2 shields and gets ready to use his magic. In this world, tight formations usually help soldiers survive close combat, but against Ignis Fatuus, such density turns into a deadly weakness. After putting on his demon mask, he releases the blue flames. The fire spreads rapidly, moving like a living force down the slope. As a result, chaos erupts among the enemy ranks. Their screams fill the air as panic spreads. Some try to escape, but the flames catch them before they can get away. The fire clings to both armor and flesh, burning through everything without stopping. It consumes them completely and leaving behind collapsing figures and the strong smell of burned metal and bodies. From above, Walm observes the destruction caused by his magic. Because his face is hidden behind the mask, he feels detached from what he has done. Without that sense of identity, fear and guilt no longer affect him, and he continues seeing himself only as a soldier carrying out orders. After returning, his commander acknowledges his actions. Walm accepts the recognition briefly and leaves without engaging further. The damage from Ignis Fatuus turns out to be severe. The Libertoa and Christ forces suffer the most, losing around 100 soldiers instantly with many more injured. Because of these heavy losses, the alliance of 4 nations is forced to retreat for the time being. In the trenches, the surviving soldiers are left covered in burns, their bodies shaking and their expressions empty from what they have experienced. Meanwhile, inside the Christ Army's medical tents, the situation becomes overwhelming. The air fills with screams and the smell of burned flesh as healing mages struggle to handle the number of injured. Myasane continues working without rest despite her exhaustion. She has treated many types of injuries before, but this situation feels entirely different since almost every patient suffers from severe burns. One soldier arrives barely able to breathe because his throat is damaged internally. She immediately focuses her healing magic there, managing to restore his breathing. Even so, she cannot fully heal him, since she must conserve her remaining energy for others. She moves on to the next patient, a soldier with serious burns across his lower body. He begs for help, and she reassures him while continuing her work. One after another, she keeps treating the wounded. As time passes, her vision starts to blur, and her body weakens from mana exhaustion. The other healers have already collapsed, leaving her as the only one still working. Because this is the only way she can fight in the war, she forces herself to continue. By sunset, the flow of wounded soldiers finally slows down. The tent grows quieter, with only tired breathing and distant flames breaking the silence. Maya looks outside and notices piles of bodies being burned. At that moment, a severely injured soldier crawls toward her. Despite his condition, he manages a weak smile and expresses gratitude for surviving. While struggling with emotion, he describes how a masked man released blue flames that wiped out everyone around him in an instant, leaving only a few survivors. Maya listens and gently comforts him, encouraging him to rest. Tears fall as she feels both relief that he survived and fear of what the war is becoming. The image of the man with blue fire stays in her mind, along with the thought of losing the people she cares about. With no control over the battlefield itself, she can only hope that those close to her never face that same destruction. Later, inside the command tent, the leaders gather and assess the situation. After considering the damage caused by Ignis Fatuus, they reach a clear decision. They assign Yuto Makoto, known as the Dragon Slayer hero, to track down and eliminate the man responsible for wielding that power. The discussion inside the command tent stretches on, growing heavier with every moment. One of the commanders finally lays out the situation clearly. He explains that the Hyzerk bastion they are fighting over is not their true objective. Even if it falls, Sarajo Fortress still stands untouched, meaning the enemy has not truly been weakened yet. He then reflects on their earlier progress. The Christ Empire had been leading the alliance, successfully capturing 2 bastions while the others struggled. That sense of achievement had given them confidence, but the events of the previous day completely erased that pride. Because of a single attack, their momentum collapses. He reports the numbers next. A total of 102 soldiers have died and 117 have been injured in one assault, all caused by just one Hyzerk soldier. The tent falls silent immediately. Some commanders struggle to accept it, while others begin to feel fear settle in. The idea that one man could inflict that level of damage starts to feel real. To remove any doubt, the commander calls in the surviving squad leader from the front lines. The man is brought inside barely holding himself together, his body wrapped in bandages with burns covering almost all of him. Even in that state, he explains what happened. He describes how his unit had been ordered to push forward in a full assault. They advanced up the embankment with shields raised, believing they could break through with enough force. That confidence disappears the moment someone warns that Ignis Fatuus has appeared. At first, he assumes it is just a rumor used to scare soldiers, but that belief does not last long. The attack follows immediately. Soldiers closest to the source are burned alive within seconds. Those slightly farther away are left in unbearable pain with severe burns, including himself. Even those at a greater distance are not spared completely. Because of this, he realizes that their usual methods of defense are useless. Shields provide no protection, and hiding does nothing. Running is the only option, yet even that does not guarantee survival. When he finishes, the silence returns, but this time it carries fear. The officers are no longer thinking about armies or strategies. Their concern shifts to a single individual capable of changing the entire battlefield. Johanna, a knight of the Christ Royal Knights, recalls the burned bodies she saw and tightens her grip, unable to ignore the reality in front of her. They begin discussing possible responses. Since direct confrontation seems ineffective, they settle on a different approach. Drawing that man out becomes the only workable plan. No one steps forward at first because the risk is obvious. Johanna eventually takes that role upon herself and offers her squad as bait. The commander studies her for a moment before accepting. He makes it clear that failure cannot happen, because too much depends on this attempt. The next morning begins quietly on the other side. Walm wakes up before the others, surrounded by the usual stillness that follows a night of battle. The air still carries the smell of smoke and sweat. As he shifts, he notices Noor asleep beside him. The calm moment leads him to act on impulse, and he pinches her nose as a joke. That small action causes a chain reaction. Noor reacts in her sleep and throws a punch, which lands on Burrito instead. Burrito wakes up in confusion, briefly thinking they are under attack before settling down again. The situation becomes even more ridiculous when Walm notices Due sleeping loudly nearby, completely unaware of everything happening. The group lies tangled together while Jose rests peacefully with his canteen held like a pillow. Because of this moment, Walm briefly forgets about the battlefield and everything tied to it. The constant presence of death fades for a short time. He quietly drinks some water and lies back down, allowing himself a bit more rest before reality catches up again. Later, the squad gathers for their next assignment. They are ordered to support Platoon Palma, which seems like a routine defensive task. The expectation is simple. The enemy will push forward, and their job is to hold the line and force them back. If things become critical, Walm is expected to use Ignis Fatuus to eliminate the threat in one decisive move. Each member receives a role. Walm is instructed to conserve his mana until it is truly needed. Jose takes responsibility for watching over the less experienced soldiers. Willard is assigned to support Walm with magic, while the rest are told to look for weaknesses and strike when opportunities appear. The squad responds with energy and moves into position. The battle begins with immediate intensity. Nor throws stones with speed and accuracy, taking down enemies before they can react. Her arrows follow the same pattern, precise and effective, showing her strength as an archer, even if she avoids close combat. When her skill is acknowledged, she reacts shyly but continues without losing focus. Nearby, Burrito nearly gets hit by an ice attack, but Jose steps in and destroys it instantly, preventing serious harm. That action leaves Burrito impressed, reinforcing the trust within the group. As the fight continues, it settles into a pattern of constant pressure, with both sides attacking and defending without pause. During this exchange, Walm starts noticing something unusual. The enemy is not fighting the same way as before. Their movements feel more aggressive and desperate, and even their mages abandon their usual safe positions to join the front lines. At first, he ignores it, but his habit of overthinking during battle brings his attention back to it. Before he can act on that thought, a sudden attack interrupts him. A fireball hits directly, but he absorbs it without reacting, allowing his teammates to use him as cover. This works because of his natural resistance to fire, something he has learned through experience. Even so, he finds it hard to accept being used in that way. Then his focus shifts again. In the distance, he spots Johanna leading a charge. The moment he sees her, a sense of unease grows. The situation begins to make sense. This is not a normal assault. As Johanna advances, even incoming attacks fail to slow her down. A wind blade aimed at her is deflected easily, and she counters immediately, taking down the enemy mage without hesitation. This display confirms how dangerous she is. When her squad gets close enough, the order comes for Walm to use Ignis Fatuus. He climbs up and prepares to activate it, but something stops him. Johanna is already watching him. Because of that, she reacts first. Her attack begins instantly. Water spheres strike him one after another, knocking him off his position before he can respond. He falls hard, disoriented from the impact. As he tries to understand what happened, the realization becomes clear. This time, he is not just another soldier in the fight. He is the main target. He attempts to recover, but another attack follows. A blade pins his foot to the ground, sending sharp pain through his body. His scream carries across the battlefield. Noor reacts with panic. Burrito freezes, and Jose finally understands the situation, but remains too far to intervene. Duel does not hesitate. He rushes forward despite the danger, driven by the need to reach his comrade. His body struggles to keep up, but he continues moving. Just as he gets close, more attacks rain down from above, slowing him but not stopping him completely. From a distance, Jose senses that everything is about to go wrong. That feeling proves correct when a powerful attack descends before Duel can reach Walm. The impact creates a blinding explosion that engulfs the area completely. The ground beneath Walm breaks apart under the force, and with nothing to hold onto, he is pulled down into the darkness below. Walm drifts into a dream that pulls him back to his childhood, to a time when hunger had taken over his village. Food had become so scarce that even their family fields stopped producing anything. Because of that, he and his brother spent their days searching for anything they could eat. Their bodies weakened and their stomachs always empty. At that pace, survival itself had started to feel uncertain. His brother then calls him over, hinting that he has found something. When Walm follows, he sees trees filled with fruit. That sight changes everything. The two of them rush forward without thinking, grabbing whatever they can reach and eating as much as possible. Relief replaces hunger for a moment, and laughter comes naturally. His brother tells him to keep it a secret, explaining that Walm needs the food more since he is still growing. As they eat, birds gather around them, drawn by the fruit. Walm casually thinks about catching them for food as well, which makes his brother laugh and react with a mix of amusement and concern. That reaction leads to something more serious. His brother admits that he worries about him, just like their parents do. Walm always behaves older than he is, carrying responsibility as if everything depends on him. Because of that, his brother reminds him that he is still the youngest and should allow himself to act like it. He playfully pinches his cheeks and starts teasing him, which turns the moment light again. They both end up laughing together, and Walm feels a quiet sense of happiness knowing someone cares that much about him. That feeling makes him regret his behavior, and he silently apologizes. The dream then shifts without warning. He finds himself walking through a city at night, back when he was still living as Rizzo in Japan. The lights flicker in the distance, but something feels wrong. A sense of unease grows as he realizes he has forgotten something important. That missing piece suddenly becomes clear. Yoraizo Takamura is dead. Because of that realization, a portal opens beside him, filled with shifting darkness. Voices begin calling out, urging him to step forward. Instead of resisting, he moves toward it and jumps in. That action brings him back to reality. Walm wakes up buried under rubble, his body overwhelmed with pain. He forces himself to move and checks his condition. His foot is badly damaged, several of his fingers are broken, and one of his eyes no longer works. The attack has burned through part of his face, but the dirt covering him has reduced the damage just enough to keep him alive. As he looks around, he understands where he is. He lies in a ditch filled with corpses. Soldiers from Hyzerk, including his own comrades, are piled together like discarded objects. The smell is overwhelming, but that is not what affects him the most. Recognizing familiar faces makes everything worse. The reality settles in when he sees his squad. The three who always caused trouble lie motionless, their eyes missing. Nearby, he finds the rest. Noor, Burrito, and everyone from Due's squad are gone. Because of that, the weight of everything crashes down on him at once. He drops to his knees and lets out a broken scream, unable to hold anything back. He remains like that for a long time, until there is nothing left to release. When he finally stands again, something inside him has changed. The battlefield around him is no longer active. The fortress is in ruins, and the front line has turned into a silent graveyard. What was once chaos has now become stillness. He notices the flag of the Four-Nation Alliance nearby, which suggests the enemy has taken control of the area. In the distance, faint lights can be seen along the walls, along with a black banner. That sight makes him consider the possibility that his own side has retreated there, though even that thought carries uncertainty. His attention returns to the bodies. The condition of the corpses reveals something disturbing. Many of them have been mutilated, especially their eyes. That detail reminds him of something his brother once told him, that those who lose their eyes before death are unable to find peace and are left wandering in darkness. The idea makes the scene feel even more cruel. Because of what he sees, he begins questioning the nature of the war itself. He wonders why such acts would be done, even against enemies. The thought that war should have limits crosses his mind, but it does not stay for long. A bitter realization follows. He remembers his own actions, how easily he has taken lives, and how little hesitation he has shown. That memory makes his earlier thought feel meaningless. He understands that death does not follow rules. It comes suddenly and without exception. That is the reality he accepts. In this world, survival depends on killing before being killed. As he processes this, two enemy soldiers approach the ditch. They seem to be part of a patrol and notice him moving. Because of his condition, they mistake him for something less than human and approach carelessly. Walm remains still, lost in his thoughts, questioning what keeps him alive. That question circles in his mind until an answer begins to form. Whether it is duty, revenge, or something darker, it gives him a reason to move. By the time the soldiers get close, he is no longer passive. He attacks without warning. His blade cuts low, severing both of one soldier's feet instantly. The man collapses, and before he can recover, Walm finishes him. The second soldier reacts and charges, but Walm catches the weapon directly and takes control of it. The fight ends quickly and violently, leaving nothing behind but silence again. Afterward, he looks up at the sky and thinks about Ignis Fatuus, the blue flame he commands. The idea is that if he uses it now, it might serve as a signal. Maybe it could guide those who died, especially his comrades, out of the darkness they are trapped in. At that moment, something nearby begins to move. The demon mask he once used lies within reach, almost as if it is calling to him. He picks it up without hesitation. With that decision, Walm raises his hand and prepares to summon his flame once again. Walm moves forward with complete clarity, and that clarity comes from loss. Because his entire squad has been wiped out, he no longer holds back. Revenge becomes the only thing guiding him, and that drives him to burn every enemy camp in his path. As he advances, tents collapse one after another, and the night sky lights up with fire. The smell of ash sticks to him, but he does not slow down because his goal is to make the enemy suffer the same way his comrades did. By the time the flames reach the sixth circle of camps, the damage is already spreading through the enemy forces. Inside one of the tents, Yuto lies awake, unable to rest. The screams from earlier still echo in his mind, refusing to fade, which keeps him from calming down. Because of that unrest, he struggles to regain control of himself. At that moment, Makoto rushes in and informs him that the camp is under attack. Yuuto reacts instantly and gets to his feet. His attention turns to Johanna and Ayane, which pushes him to move without delay. As he steps outside, he sees a massive blue fire spreading across the different circles at an alarming speed. That sight makes him realize that the user of Ignis Fatuus is still alive. He had believed that he had already killed him, so this forces him to assume that the man has somehow returned, possibly as something no longer human. Even with that thought, he does not stop. The guilt he carries remains, but his worry for Johanna and Ayane drives him forward toward the flames. At the same time, in another circle, tension builds for a different reason. Inside a large tent, leaders from different nations argue over who will lead the next full assault on Hyzerk. Because leading the attack means gaining power and recognition, each faction tries to claim that role. The Chris side stays out of the argument, since their earlier success has already secured their position. That situation causes the others to act aggressively, like they are competing over something valuable. Johanna grows tired of the argument and suggests settling it by chance, which only irritates them further. Nearby, Rita watches everything from a distance. She does not involve herself and remains calm, supported by her knight who stays close to her side. That tense moment suddenly breaks when a tremor runs through the ground. The sound of fighting follows, which immediately raises suspicion. Some consider the possibility of spies and suggest waiting for proper information, since the camp is heavily guarded. Despite that, Johanna senses something different. The air turns cold and a familiar kind of magic spreads through it, making her uneasy. Soon after, guards rush into the tent and report that the attack is coming from the third circle. At first, they assume it is caused by undead forces. When asked about the numbers, the reply changes everything. There is only one attacker, and it is the same Ignis Fatuus user they had been ordered to eliminate earlier. That confirmation causes panic to spread instantly. Before they can react properly, the situation escalates. The guard who delivers the message is suddenly consumed by blue flames, and the fire bursts outward toward everyone inside. Because of the sudden explosion, survival depends on immediate reaction. One of them uses the surroundings to shield herself from the blast, while others are caught in the flames. The tent is destroyed in moments. When the fire settles, only 7 people remain alive inside. Rita survives because her knight protects her from the attack. The destruction happens so quickly that no one has time to process it. A brief moment of relief appears, but it does not last. One of the survivors is suddenly attacked from behind and killed before he can react. Another tries to fight back, but Walm moves faster and cuts him down instantly. Because of that, the number of survivors drops again, leaving only 5 people standing. Johanna prepares to fight and focuses on Walm. His condition surprises her. His armor is damaged and his body is covered in injuries, yet he continues to stand and fight. That makes him even more dangerous. They face each other, both gathering their strength, and the clash begins. Walm attacks first, using a powerful strike with his weapon. Johanna manages to block it, but the force behind it shocks her. Even with broken fingers and severe injuries, he still holds that level of strength. That realization forces her to take him seriously. Walm follows up by releasing Ignis Fatuus. Johanna reacts quickly and raises a barrier using earth magic to protect herself. The defense holds just enough to prevent immediate destruction, but the impact still pushes her back. When the dust clears, she looks at him closely and understands something important. He is not undead. He is still alive, which means he is acting with full awareness. That understanding makes the situation more dangerous. Without allies around him, Walm has no reason to hold back. Johanna realizes that he is not here randomly. He has come for revenge. She attempts to reach him with reason, explaining that continuing this fight will not change anything and that he is the last survivor from his battalion. Instead of calming him, that only fuels his anger. Because of that, he releases another wave of Ignis Fatuus. Before the attack can reach her, her knight intervenes and strikes Walm from the side. The impact interrupts his attack and weakens the flames before they can fully spread. Walm reacts to the pain and immediately shifts his focus to the new threat. He swings his weapon toward the knight, but Johanna joins in at the same time. That turns the fight into a 2-on-1 battle. Both sides push forward without holding back, and the intensity rises quickly. At a distance, Rita remains frozen, unable to move. The sudden destruction leaves her unable to understand what is happening. Only moments ago, the tent had been filled with people, all of them arguing, voices raised over strategy and power, and now almost all of them are gone. That shock keeps her in place. her feet refusing to respond to any command her mind tries to send. As she slowly moves back, she notices something about Walm. His appearance feels familiar. That realization becomes clear when he is pushed back and lands near her. Their eyes meet, and recognition happens on both sides. Walm expresses regret that he did not kill her earlier, and those words hit her deeply. She remembers the person he used to be, someone who once showed kindness. Now that image is replaced by someone filled with pain and anger. That contrast leaves her shaken, caught between what she remembers and what she is witnessing. The fight continues as her knight attacks again. Walm blocks and counters, keeping up with both of them despite his injuries. The exchange remains intense, with neither side backing down. Rita stays where she is, unable to act. She has always believed she was doing what was right for her country, but now she cannot even move to help. The situation exists because of the choices made by her side, and that realization weighs on her, pressing down steadily with every passing second. After some time, the fight reaches its end. The outcome does not come from defeat, but from Walm creating an opening. He uses Ignis Fatuus again, not to destroy, but to distract. That moment allows him to escape from the tent. The knight returns to Rita and checks on her condition. She confirms that she is unharmed and focuses on Walm instead. It becomes clear that he has escaped using his flames. The knight also confirms where Walm comes from, but there is no time to focus on that detail. Other survivors begin to emerge, all shaken by what they have experienced. Facing Ignis Fatuus directly changes their understanding completely. They realize that they had underestimated Walm, and now they see him as an even greater threat than the heroes themselves. Because of that, they decide to regroup with the rest of their forces and locate their main commander. Rita follows them, but her thoughts remain unsettled. She cannot ignore the feeling of being powerless at such an important moment, and that feeling does not fade as she walks. Meanwhile, at Sarajevo Fortress, Commander Gerard observes the situation from his side. He reflects on recent events, especially the loss of the Ligurian battalion. Despite his experience, he knows that he cannot replace the soldiers he has lost. Because of that, he considers different strategies such as traps, assassinations, and sabotage, turning each option over carefully in his mind, but none of them seem effective enough to change the situation in any meaningful way. That leads him to settle on a different plan. He decides to hold the fortress for as long as possible while slowing the enemy down through destruction of the surrounding area. Retreating without resistance would cost him his position, something he refuses to accept under any circumstance. At that moment, the windows begin to shake, which draws his attention outside. When he steps onto the rampart, the cold night air meets him immediately, and what he sees stops him. A massive blue fire is spreading across the bastion in wide, sweeping movements that consume everything in their path. That sight confirms something unexpected. Walm is still alive. Instead of concern, that realization excites him. He reacts immediately by ordering a full mobilization. Every available soldier is to move, and preparations for a trap begin at once. Speed becomes the most important factor, and there is no room for hesitation. When someone questions the decision, he shuts it down without allowing doubt to spread or take hold among the ranks. He continues giving orders without pause, his voice cutting through the tension with authority, making it clear that the outcome of this night will decide everything. The camp bursts into motion the moment the fire spreads. Walm sets a storehouse ablaze on purpose, and that single act shifts everyone's attention. Because the flames threaten to reach nearby oil barrels, panic takes over and soldiers rush to contain the fire instead of searching for him. The blaze grows stronger with every passing moment, fed by the dry wood and the wind moving through the camp, and as the chaos spreads, more wounded begin to appear. While the camp struggles, Walm moves away from the center of attention. He drags the body of a Fious soldier into a hidden spot, planning to use it. As he stops, the wound on his side suddenly tears open again, and blood starts pouring out in a steady, persistent flow. The injury from the old man proves deeper than he first thought, cutting further into muscle than he had initially judged, forcing him to pause and catch his breath. That pause leads his thoughts in another direction. The idea of revenge begins to lose its shape. He realizes he has not found the three heroes or the main cavalry force. He has failed to kill Johanna, and has even been overpowered by someone unexpected. Because of that, his purpose starts to feel unclear. He looks up at the sky and reflects on everything, directing his thoughts toward his fallen comrades. He wonders if the fire he created is enough for them. The silence that follows gives him no answer, which pushes him to move forward again. He decides that escaping comes first, but to do that, he needs to change his appearance. When a search party finally reaches the area, they find what appears to be an injured Fious soldier lying on the ground. One of them immediately steps in to help, lifting him up and supporting him as they begin to move. As they walk, the soldier keeps him talking to prevent him from losing consciousness. That injured soldier is actually Walm, already blending into the situation. While being carried, he glances back at the burning storehouse and quietly reflects on his old armor, acknowledging how many times it protected him through close calls and sustained fighting. That thought carries both gratitude and a silent farewell. The soldier helping him reassures him that he will be safe once they reach the medical area. Hearing that, Walm considers eliminating him at the first chance but chooses not to act yet. Because staying unnoticed offers a better advantage, he decides to continue the act and blend in further once inside. When they reach the sick bay, the soldier calls for help and hands Walm over before leaving. Shortly after, the healer arrives. It is Ayane. Walm recognizes her immediately as one of the three heroes, confirming that all of them are present in this world. She begins examining his condition. His body shows clear damage with bruises, a deep wound across his abdomen and ankle, broken fingers, and fractured ribs. Once she understands the extent of his injuries, she places her hands on him and begins healing. The effect is immediate. His wounds close rapidly under her magic. That speed shocks him. He has never witnessed healing at that level before, and it explains why enemy soldiers can fight so recklessly. With someone like her supporting them, their endurance increases drastically. Because of that, he recognizes her as a serious threat that must eventually be dealt with. He considers attacking her right then, but the situation stops him. Acting now would expose him instantly, and without orders or a clear chance of success, the risk becomes too high. Because of that, he remains still and allows her to finish. When the healing ends, his body is restored except for his damaged eye. He acknowledges her help and then moves on without drawing attention. His next step is to disappear into the group of patients. As he walks through the hallway, he suddenly spots Johanna along with the other two heroes. That sight forces him to step back and hide for a moment. He understands the danger immediately. Someone who can recognize him is now standing between him and his exit. Because of that, he calms himself and prepares to act naturally. He pulls his scarf up to cover part of his face and begins walking forward, blending in as much as possible. As he passes by, he overhears them speaking. They express relief that he is not nearby, while Johanna reflects on her own mistakes, believing her carelessness caused unnecessary damage. The others try to ease her thoughts. During that moment, Walm keeps moving, focusing only on getting past them. Just as he's about to reach the exit, Johanna senses something and stops him. She feels a sense of familiarity and questions it. Walm turns back and explains that they had crossed paths briefly during the earlier battle in the inner circle. Because that explanation fits the situation, she accepts it. She then notices his injured eye and comments on it. He explains that it was damaged by enemy magic. That answer satisfies her and she lets him go, even apologizing for stopping him. Walm acknowledges her and quickly leaves, finally making it past without being exposed. He believes he only needs to stay calm now and disappear completely. That plan is interrupted when a messenger rushes in, urgently calling for Johanna and the heroes. The sudden urgency makes Walm stop and listen. The message changes everything. Hyzerk soldiers have launched an attack and have already broken into the current circle. That news shocks everyone. Johanna questions how such a breach happened so quickly. The explanation reveals the truth. The front lines were not broken. Instead, hidden tunnels were used, allowing soldiers to emerge from within while the fires distracted everyone. This strategy is identified as part of a larger plan, which makes the situation even worse. Cavalry forces are also joining the attack in large numbers, increasing the pressure rapidly. Walm realizes that his own side has launched a powerful counterattack, something even he did not expect. Johanna immediately decides to act. She plans to eliminate the source of the attack by targeting the tunnels directly. That decision creates a reaction within Walm. He understands what will happen if they succeed. The messenger then leads them toward their commander, and they begin moving in the same direction as Walm. At that moment, he faces a choice. Letting them pass would allow him to escape without risk. Acting against them would put him in danger again. For a brief moment, he considers doing nothing. He convinces himself that he has already done enough and fulfilled his role. That thought almost allows him to walk away. Then the memory of his fallen squad returns. That image changes everything. The idea of leaving it unfinished becomes unbearable. Because of that, he abandons hesitation. He acts instantly. The messenger is killed before anyone can react, and the sudden violence freezes the scene completely, everyone standing locked in place for a suspended moment. As Johanna moves forward, Walm takes control of the situation. He warns everyone not to move and reinforces it by burning the body with blue flames, the heat rising sharp and immediate in the enclosed space. At that point, his identity becomes clear to them. The disguise is no longer needed. With that, he declares his next move. The healer and all the wounded present are now under his control, turning them into hostages. Johanna understands the situation the moment it settles. Walm stands between them and the exit, which means there is no simple way out. Because of that, she realizes this cannot drag on. If they delay even a little, the High Cirque army will take back the Sixth Circle, and everything they have done will collapse. At the same time, Walm understands the opposite. Time works in his favor. The longer this standoff continues, the worse it becomes for them. Because of that, he focuses on slowing everything down instead of rushing forward. The moment turns into a race, not of strength, but of time. Johanna studies him, trying to read his expression, but his eyes give nothing back. That emptiness makes it harder to predict him. Walm makes his position clear through his actions. He does not want to burn the wounded or the medics who treated them, but that restraint comes with a warning. No one should move if they want those people to stay alive. One of the heroes reacts to that and treats it as a bluff, trying to provoke him, but Walm does not respond. He already knows the truth about his power. A few of them might endure his flames, but most of the people here cannot. The wounded themselves prove that point. Their hands move toward old burns, their bodies remembering what his fire does. Fear spreads quietly through them. Johanna sees that fear and calls him something less than human, but Walm does not reject it. In his mind, there is no difference between them anymore. That thought removes any hesitation he might have had. Because the danger is not fully understood, one of the heroes decides to move forward. Johanna follows at the same time, and the situation shifts into a direct clash. 3 against 1, all closing in, while Walm gathers his mana to release Ignis Fatuus again. At that exact moment, Ayani steps out from the treatment room, drawn by the noise. Her appearance changes the timing of everything. Before anyone can adjust, the flames erupt. The blast spreads across the space, filling it with blue fire. The wounded are caught in it, and their pain rises immediately. Even so, the attack does not end the fight. Johanna reacts in time and raises a wall of earth, shielding herself and the other 2 heroes. The barrier reduces the damage, but it cannot stop it completely. The impact still reaches them. One of the heroes loses the use of both arms, while the other is struck by debris from the broken defense. In a single moment, 2 of them are taken out of the fight. Walm takes advantage of that shift and pushes for surrender, offering a quick end, but Johanna refuses to yield. That refusal keeps the conflict alive, even as the situation worsens around them. Before anything else can happen, a new force breaks into the scene. The wall of the sickbay is torn open, and Commander Gran arrives. His presence changes the balance immediately. He does not hesitate and attacks Walm at once. Walm blocks the strike, but the strength behind it is overwhelming. The blow crashes into his side and sends him flying. The difference in power becomes clear in that single exchange. Johanna reacts to what happened and tries to take responsibility, but Gran does not allow it to continue. He cuts her off and orders her to take the injured heroes and leave immediately. The circle is about to fall, and staying here will only lead to more losses. She resists at first, unwilling to leave, but Gran insists. His decision leaves no room for argument. He stays behind to face Walm alone while she carries the wounded away. Walm rises again after the hit, proving he is still able to fight. That alone surprises Gran. He had expected the attack to finish him, but Walm stands again, showing that he is not an easy opponent. Walm prepares himself and makes it clear through his actions that he will not allow them to escape. Gran answers that intention with his own, making it clear he will not let Walm follow them either. Their weapons meet, and the fight begins properly. Walm immediately feels the weight behind Gran's strikes. Each blow carries raw strength, similar to what he has experienced before, but sharper and more controlled. That forces him to adjust his approach. Before he can fully change his rhythm, Gran closes the distance and locks him in place by grabbing both his arm and weapon. The control is sudden and firm. Walm barely avoids the next strike and pulls back, but Gran follows without slowing down. A direct hit lands on his face, throwing off his balance. Gran keeps pressing forward. His strength, skill, and composure combine into something overwhelming. He does not show signs of fatigue, and he reads Walm's movements with precision. Compared to this, earlier fights feel easier. At the same time, the surroundings create another problem. The fight takes place inside the sick bay, filled with injured soldiers. Walm does not want to burn them, which limits how he can use his power. Gran does not share that concern, and that difference gives him an advantage. Another strike comes and Walm avoids it mid-air before countering, but his attack lacks depth. Gran answers with a wide swing that forces Walm back again. During that exchange, one of the wounded is caught in the attack and loses a hand. The pain breaks the silence for a moment, but Gran reacts without emotion. He treats it as a minor interruption and demands silence from everyone. That reaction unsettles Walm. To Gran, the people around them hold no value beyond being obstacles. The fight continues and Gran begins to gain control. Earlier, Walm had the advantage through fear and hostages, but now his own restraint slows him down. That hesitation becomes his weakness. Gran's attacks grow heavier and Walm is pushed onto the defensive. Each strike lands close enough to harm not just him but those around him. Limbs are lost, yet no one dares to react. Then a strong blow cuts across Walm's body, forcing him to his knees. Gran approaches steadily, preparing to end it with his own hands. Still, something feels off to him. Walm has not used his flames again. Gran pushes that thought aside and reaches for him. At that moment, Walm reacts. He grabs Gran's wrist and reveals that he has been waiting for this opening. Gran attempts to strike again, but Walm blocks and counters at the same time. The blade cuts through, taking several of Gran's fingers. Pain finally breaks through his composure, and he reacts with anger. He swings again, but Walm has already moved. Gran searches for him and senses movement behind him. He attacks instantly, but the target is only a wounded patient. By the time he realizes it, Walm is gone from that spot. The fight has shifted. Gran begins to understand that Walm has not been setting traps from the start. Instead, he has been adapting, learning how to move within the limits around him. Using the wounded as cover, Walm reappears and strikes from the side, driving his blade into Gran. The armor reduces the damage, but the attack still lands. Gran reacts again, but before he can recover fully, Walm ignites the tip of his weapon. The flames spread onto Gran's armor, setting it on fire. That was the plan from the beginning. Gran continues fighting even while burning. He manages to break Walm's weapon, but the pressure does not stop. Walm uses the same wounded man as cover again, and the man accepts it without resistance. The moment shifts when Hyzerk soldiers finally arrive. Their presence ends the fight. Walm releases the body, and Gran tears off his burning armor. Gran accepts the outcome for now and withdraws, making it clear the fight is not over. Walm responds with the same attitude, showing no sign of backing down. At the same time, Johanna continues moving away with the injured heroes. One of them urges her to return because Ayane is still behind, but she does not turn back. She keeps moving forward, choosing survival over hesitation. Gran also leaves, ignoring the unfinished situation behind him. Ayane remains unconscious in the sickbay. When Hyzerk soldiers enter, they initially mistake Walm for an enemy because of the armor he is wearing. He stops them and identifies himself as part of the Ligurian battalion under Duel, explaining that the armor is only a disguise. A captain recognizes him and orders the others to stand down. Their mission has been to retake the Lost Circles, and Walm's actions have made that possible. Because of him, the Sixth Circle has fallen back into their control. The tension fades as the soldiers move on. A healer approaches Walm and offers him something to steady himself. He chooses a cigarette and tries to light it with his own flame, but nothing happens. His energy is completely gone. He reacts with a quiet sense of irony at his condition. Then the cigarette lights anyway. The healer helps him, explaining his own curiosity about the blue flames. Walm accepts it and responds with a simple promise in his own way. Once his strength returns, he will show the real flame again. On the other side of the battlefield, Hugo sits back in his chair and slowly smokes his cigar. His posture remains relaxed because the situation has already shifted in his favor. When his guard approaches and informs him that they need to move since it is no longer safe to stay, Hugo does not show concern. Instead, he takes in the outcome of the night. Because Walm has disrupted everything, the four-nation alliance has been pushed close to collapse. 2 of the 3 heroes are already defeated, and the last one, a healer, has been captured. That chain of events makes him feel that the war has finally become interesting. Because of that, he decides it is time for him to step in. At the same time, Walm regains consciousness. His body feels heavy as he wakes, and his thoughts take a moment to settle. A Hyzerk soldier stays by his side and reassures him that he is safe. He is now inside Sarvo Fortress. Because Walm remained unconscious for an entire day, the battle has already moved forward without him. The soldier explains everything carefully. During that time, the Alliance suffered heavy losses and had no choice but to retreat. As a result, the Hyzerk army managed to reclaim both the fortress and the outer areas. The battlefield has returned to its earlier state, but this time Hyzerk stands in control. The soldier credits that victory to Walm. Hearing that, Walm lowers his eyes and quietly drinks water. The outcome does not bring him comfort. Even though they have won, the cost remains clear in his mind. He understands that he could have died during the fight, and a part of him would have accepted that. Yet, at the same time, he still holds on to life. That conflict stays inside him. He survives, but everyone else from his side is gone. The soldier notices the change in his expression and becomes concerned. He gently informs Walm that once he finishes resting, he should report to Commander Berger and confirm that he has regained consciousness. Walm responds in a lighter tone, stretching the moment by asking for more water first. The soldier allows it and even reassures him that there is no urgency. The report can wait until later, so Walm is given time to recover. Elsewhere in the fortress, Berger handles matters in a completely different way. He stands in front of a prisoner and continues an interrogation without hesitation. Because he sees prisoners as nothing more than a burden, he uses pain as a tool without showing emotion. His focus remains on the wounded soldiers under his command. They need healing, and without a healer, many of them will die. Ayane refuses to help at first. Because of that refusal, Berger raises the pressure. He injures another prisoner in front of her, making the consequences clear. Survival here depends on being useful. That truth leaves no room for hesitation. When he extends the threat toward her assistant Maya, the situation changes. Ayane understands what will happen next if she continues to resist. Because of that, she finally agrees to cooperate. Her decision comes from necessity, not willingness. Berger leaves after securing her agreement. As he walks away, his actions make one thing clear. In war, there is no space for mercy. Only results matter. Later, Walm is brought to Berger's office. This time, the commander greets him with a rare sense of approval. He acknowledges the impact Walm has made. News of his actions has already spread among the soldiers, turning him into a figure of importance. Walm does not fully accept that praise. He explains that his survival was not something he planned. His battalion was destroyed, and he remained alive by chance. The loss still weighs heavily on him, especially when he thinks about Due's squad. Berger listens and acknowledges that loss. At the same time, he points out something Walm cannot deny. He had the option to retreat, yet he chose to stay and fight. Because of that decision, Berger considers him worthy of recognition. He then promotes Walm to knight status. The title surprises him, but Berger explains that it is honorary. Even so, it carries meaning and influence both on the battlefield and back home. The council already views him as someone who can become a symbol. Berger continues and provides him with new equipment. He gives him armor and a magic pouch that can hold far more than it appears while staying light to carry. Since Walm's previous weapon was destroyed, Berger also hands him a new sword, crafted for those who have proven themselves in battle. Walm accepts everything with quiet gratitude. With that done, Berger assigns him a new role. From now on, Walm will serve directly under him. His first task is already decided, and it carries importance. Walm is ordered to guard Ayane, the captured healer. When he meets her, he explains his role clearly. He is there to protect her and also to keep watch over her. Other guards remain present at all times, ensuring that she cannot escape and that no one can reach her. Ayane remains calm, but there is awareness in her expression. Maya also recognizes Walm, and both understand who he is. Walm does not hide it. He simply acknowledges that she treated him before. He sets a clear boundary. They are free to continue their work, but during emergencies they must follow the guard's instructions. With that understanding, Ayane and Maya begin treating the wounded again. Walm stays nearby and observes. As he watches, he begins to understand the scale of their ability. Soldiers who should not survive begin to recover. Their work is steady and precise. One of the guards, Moritz, notices Walm's attention and casually speaks to him. Their exchange remains simple, and Moritz shares his own unusual trait, showing pride in his resistance to poison. Even so, both of them return their focus to the same scene. Ayane and Maya continue saving one life after another. Walm realizes something important while watching them. Their healing feels more overwhelming than any destructive magic he has seen. Ayane's power and Maya's knowledge fit together perfectly, creating results that feel almost unnatural. Together, they form a balance that cannot be easily replaced. As days pass, the atmosphere inside the sick bay begins to change. The wounded recover, and their gratitude becomes visible. They start bringing small gifts, sharing what little they have. Because of that, the heavy feeling of the place slowly fades. Walm notices the difference. Even Ayane begins to speak with the soldiers naturally, as if the war between them has momentarily disappeared. For a short time, that calm reaches him as well. That calm does not last. A new patient is brought in after falling from the ramparts. Walm helps place him on the table, and Ayane begins healing him immediately. The process finishes quickly, and the man appears fine. However, something does not feel right. Walm notices that the man's body remains tense and his hand stays clenched. Because he has seen many wounded by now, that small detail stands out. His instincts react before his thoughts fully form. He moves forward at once. At that exact moment, the man reveals his intent. A hidden weapon appears, aimed directly at Ayani. Because Walm moved first, he intercepts the attack and crushes the man's arm, stopping the strike. The attacker continues, releasing concealed poison darts. Walm responds without hesitation and cuts them down before they can reach their target. He closes the distance and disables the man completely. Before the others can restrain him, the assassin dies from poison hidden within himself. Silence follows. Ayani struggles to process what just happened. Moritz attempts to reassure her, but the moment leaves a deeper effect. The reality becomes clear in a way that cannot be ignored. Healing saves lives, but those same lives return to the battlefield and continue the cycle. Walm steps in and ends the treatments for the day. He leads both women away from the room, giving them time to breathe and recover from what just happened. Later, during dinner, the atmosphere remains quiet. Maya encourages Ayani to eat even though her appetite is weak. Walm stands nearby, keeping watch. When he notices wine, he reacts based on his old habits, then realizes the difference between this world and the one he came from. Because of that, he shifts the moment in a simple way. He takes out food from his pouch and suggests preparing it differently, creating something warm to share. That small gesture changes the mood. The tension slowly eases, and Ayani finally relaxes enough to smile. For a brief moment, the war feels far away. Afterward, Walm steps outside into the quiet corridor. Before leaving, he makes it clear that if they need anything, he will try to provide it. Once alone, his thoughts turn inward. He recognizes the contradiction in himself. He feels sympathy for someone who suffers because of actions he was part of. Inside the room, Ayani watches him leave, her thoughts unsettled. Far away from this quiet moment, the situation continues to shift. News reaches Hugo that the assassination attempt has failed. Because of that, he concludes that their current approach will lead to defeat. He pushes for a harsher strategy, one that involves burning entire regions to force a larger outcome. Rita stands against that idea, unable to accept the cost it would bring. The matter moves to a vote, just as agreed before. Some support the plan, while others resist it. The division between them becomes clear. At the same time, in the great magical territory, a group thanks a girl named Lethia for saving them, and she's grateful too and agrees to do more for Mired. The forest glows with an uneasy light, spreading through the trees in a way that does not feel natural. In that quiet space, a little girl stays close to her mother. She holds on to her with comfort because her mother is the only place where she feels safe. That sense of safety leads her to express her love openly, seeing her mother as the reason for her life. That peaceful moment breaks suddenly. An attack comes without warning, and because it is so fast, there is no time to react. Her mother is struck down in an instant. The girl cannot even understand what she is seeing before it is already over. Fear takes hold of her as she cries out and reaches forward. Even in that final moment, her mother focuses only on her. She urges her to run, making it clear that staying means death. That warning comes too late to protect them both, but it gives the girl a direction. Because of that, she tries to move, even though her body is trembling. The area around Sarvo Fortress, once filled with villages, has already changed. Something unnatural has taken over. As the girl moves forward, a massive creature appears in front of her. Its presence is enough to stop her in place. Because she freezes, more creatures close in. They surround her quickly, leaving no path to escape. The moment stretches as she struggles, but it does not change the outcome. The creatures drag her away and pain spreads through her body. She continues to cry out, calling for her mother, but nothing answers her anymore. Far from that forest, reports begin to gather at the command. One message follows another, each one carrying worse news. Gantria has fallen, and with it comes the first clear sign of how large the threat has become. Tens of thousands of monsters have appeared. They do not move like a normal force. Instead, they spread out and destroy everything in their path. Because of that movement, forests are being flattened as they advance. There is no pattern to it, only destruction. The scale continues to grow as more regions report the same thing. Cities begin to lose control, and their forces are forced to retreat step by step. The numbers rise again. Another region reports tens of thousands more. Losses increase, and the situation becomes harder to contain with each passing moment. What started as a threat now begins to feel like something much larger. The king listens carefully as each detail is explained. At first, the reports seem too extreme to accept. Then the pattern becomes clear. This is not a random event. It matches something known from the past, the Great Rampage. The informant explains it slowly. When demon territory is damaged beyond a limit, the creatures lose all control. They stop acting with purpose and begin destroying everything around them. There is no distinction between ally or enemy. Anyone caught in their path is wiped out. The king recalls what he has seen before. He has witnessed a rampage in the past, but it was much smaller. Even then, the destruction had been severe. Entire areas were lost and many lives were taken. Because of that memory, he understands what this means now. The informant continues, explaining the difference. This time, the disturbance began in a much larger region. Because of that, the scale has increased beyond anything they have faced before. The king connects the cause step by step. The demon lands outside Mired's borders have been affected. That territory is the largest one. Because it was disturbed, the reaction has spread widely. He realizes that this did not happen by accident. The four-nation alliance likely caused it, trying to stop Hyzerk by using a method they could not control. That realization forces him to act. Holding their current position is no longer possible. If they stay, they will be swallowed by the same destruction. Because of that, he orders a retreat. The army will fall back to the former borders of Mired. There, they will try to form a defensive line. Additional troops from other regions will be brought in to hold whatever ground they can. The order creates hesitation among his people. They struggle to accept leaving behind territory that cost them so much to gain. The king does not allow that doubt to continue. He explains that the threat is far greater than land. If they remain where they are, everything will be lost. Even the inner regions are no longer safe. Because of that, survival becomes the only goal. His focus narrows further. Protecting the capital alone would count as a success now. Even that outcome is uncertain. That understanding pushes him to act faster. Every moment matters from here on. Away from the command, the effects of that decision begin to show. Soldiers move along the roads and retreat. Their pace is uneven, and their formation keeps breaking. Because they are constantly under pressure, they cannot organize themselves properly. Some of them begin to understand what this means. The people of Mired are no longer protected by a kingdom. They are being forced out, becoming refugees with no place to return to. Rita hears those words as they spread among the soldiers. Because she knows what led to this, the weight settles on her. The decision to attack the demon lands has turned into something much worse. She cannot accept it, but she cannot deny it either. That conflict builds inside her. The thought that this outcome cannot be undone begins to take hold. It leaves her overwhelmed, unable to find a way to fix what has already happened. At the same time, the disaster reaches even further. In the royal capital of Fious, the king reflects on everything. Until now, war had been numbers and reports to him. He read about losses, but he did not feel them directly. That changes in a single moment. The monsters reach the capital itself. Because they are part of the rampage, they do not stop or slow down. They tear through the city without hesitation. The destruction unfolds in front of him, leaving no space for doubt. The king realizes his mistake fully. Even with all his knowledge, he chose a path that led to this. His actions helped bring this disaster to his people. As a ruler, he failed them. As the monsters approach, he accepts what is coming. The kingdom he ruled no longer exists in the way it once did. It has already fallen in everything that matters. The creatures reach him, and his end comes quickly. With that, the Fious kingdom collapses. The four-nation alliance falls apart with it, unable to hold together after causing something this large. Elsewhere, Ayane travels in a carriage. As she looks outside, the land tells its own story. Bodies are scattered across the ground, and the number of them keeps increasing. Because of that, she begins to understand the scale of what has happened. The explanation reaches her soon after. The Alliance attacked the demon territories, and that action triggered the rampage. Because of that, the destruction spread in every direction. Hyzerk forces abandon their position and move to regroup, preparing to stop the monsters elsewhere. That truth settles heavily. The destruction around them is not random. It is the result of human decisions. Before that thought can settle fully, movement appears ahead. Goblin riders rush toward them, moving fast and without hesitation. Their presence shows that the outer defenses have already been broken. Because of that, there is no time left to think. Walm reacts immediately. He steps down from the carriage and prepares himself to face what is coming. He gives a short instruction to Moritz, trusting both of them to handle the situation. Walm steps down from the wagon the moment the goblin riders come into view. Because they charge straight in without slowing, he reacts immediately and takes control of the front line. His first move focuses on the vanguard. He releases his flames and hits them directly. Fire spreads over them at once, and their formation breaks as they burn. Even so, the attack does not stop everything. 4 riders slip past him during that moment. Because they ignore him completely, they head straight for the wagons instead. That forces the soldiers guarding the rear to engage them directly. Walm does not turn back. He finishes what is in front of him first. He cuts one rider cleanly in half, then adjusts his position as another approaches from a difficult angle. Because there is no clean opening, he uses his flames again and burns it down instead. Only one rider remains. Walm shifts his focus to find it, but the movement comes from somewhere unexpected. The wolf mount leaps at him suddenly. He reacts on instinct and drives his weapon into its mouth to stop it, but something feels wrong. The goblin is not there. He looks up and finds the real threat. The goblin is already descending from above with its blade raised. Because there is no time to reposition, Walm brings the shaft of his halberd up to intercept. The enemy's sword slides along the weapon, but the motion redirects the strike. Walm follows through and counters in the same movement, splitting the blade and crushing the goblin before it can recover. When the fighting ends, Walm does not relax. Instead, he begins to observe the scene carefully. Something about the encounter feels off. The goblins moved with coordination and readiness that does not match what he expects. More importantly, there were only 12 of them. That number is far too small for a normal goblin group. Because of that, a sense of unease settles in. A soldier approaches him and briefly comments on his flames before delivering new information. Another squad escorting refugees has already been wiped out further up the road. The refugees are gone as well. Because of that report, Walm considers the possibility that the same riders were responsible. Still, the small number continues to bother him. The situation does not match the usual pattern. Before sending the soldier away, he gives a clear instruction. The prisoners need to be watched closely. Something about all of this does not feel right. Walm returns to the wagon. Moritz greets him casually while Ayane remains visibly tense. Because she is watching him closely, he reassures her that the attackers have already been dealt with. After that, he sits down quietly. His thoughts drift for a moment, and he reflects on his own limits. He realizes he never learned how to fight on horseback, which could have helped in a situation like this. Moritz responds to that thought with an offer to teach him, but attaches his own condition in a playful way. Walm refuses without hesitation. The moment passes quickly and the group continues moving forward. Not long after, they reach the area mentioned in the report. The bodies are still there. Because the deaths are recent, the scene has not yet settled. Walm steps down again and begins to examine the corpses. Something stands out immediately. The injuries do not match what he expects from goblin riders. Both humans and goblins lie among the dead, and both groups have been attacked. That detail shifts his understanding. Whatever happened here involved something else. A soldier calls out after making another discovery. Some of the bodies show massive bite marks, torn apart by something far larger. On the ground, tracks are visible. The shape is unfamiliar. 3 claws curve forward with a 4th set behind. Walm asks if anyone recognizes it, but no one does. They were hoping he would know. He does not. His experience has been limited to smaller creatures, nothing like this. Because they cannot stay, he gives a practical order. The bodies are blocking the path, so they need to be moved. The soldiers begin clearing the way quickly. Their movements are rough but necessary. There's no time to show care and no orders to stop for burial. Walm handles one body more carefully than the others. Even so, he understands the situation. Respect has no place here when survival is at risk. Still, he takes a brief moment and offers a quiet prayer before moving on. That moment is interrupted without warning. Something flies through the air and lands near him. He reacts instantly and prepares himself. When he looks, he recognizes the body. It is a Heiser cavalryman, thrown with enough force to travel that distance. Because of that, the direction of the threat becomes clear. It comes from deeper within the forest. The soldiers tense as the ground begins to shake. Whatever is approaching carries enough weight to disturb the earth itself. The source reveals itself soon after. A wyvern bursts into view. The creature moves with speed that breaks any formation. It dives and rises again, ignoring Walm at first and heading straight for the soldiers. Walm understands the danger immediately and orders them to keep moving without stopping. There is no way to predict where it will strike next. Even with that order, the wyvern is too fast. It reaches one of the soldiers before anyone can react and devours him in a single motion, leaving only part of the body behind. Because of that, Walm releases his flames again. Tracking the creature is difficult, but the wyvern reacts to the attack by diving straight down. It meets the flames head-on as it lands, tearing up the ground beneath it. Its tail swings wide and sends several soldiers flying. Walm realizes the problem quickly. He cannot use his full power without risking his own side. At the same time, the creature's scales reduce the impact of his flames. That leaves him with fewer options. Because of that, he closes the distance. He channels mana through his body to strengthen his strike and drives his halberd forward. The weapon connects, but the result falls short. Only the tip manages to pierce the scales. The resistance is so strong that the impact travels back into his arms and numbs them. The wyvern reacts immediately. It lunges toward him, aiming to swallow him whole. Walm answers without hesitation. He releases his flames at full strength directly into its open mouth. The blast forces the creature back and shakes the surrounding trees. Even so, the result does not match his expectations. The same power that can melt steel only scorches its scales. The wyvern strikes again with its claws, but Walm avoids the hit. This time the creature focuses entirely on him. Because he has hurt it, he becomes its main target. Walm steadies himself, but the situation remains unchanged. He has already used everything available to him, and the wyvern still stands before him. Walm keeps moving step by step as the wyvern keeps coming at him without pause. Every strike from the beast smashes the ground apart, and even when he avoids the main hit, broken rocks and debris still slam into him. Because of that constant pressure, his body keeps taking damage little by little. He understands that he only needs one clear opening, but the wyvern gives him none and keeps pushing him back. Nearby, one of the soldiers stands frozen, watching everything unfold. He remembers the man who was just devoured moments ago and realizes he had been someone reliable. That thought brings an uncomfortable truth to the surface. Deep down, he feels relieved that he is still alive. That feeling disgusts him, and because of it, anger builds inside him. He recalls how Walm had trusted him enough to assign him as Ayani's guard, and that memory makes him feel even smaller. While Walm keeps risking his life again and again, he feels like he has been doing nothing but standing still. That shame forces him to act. He grips his spear and pours everything into a single throw. The force behind it becomes strong enough to pierce through the wyvern's left eye. Because of that one action, the flow of the fight finally shifts. Walm notices it immediately and gives a small nod in acknowledgement. At the same time, another soldier uses earth magic to trap the wyvern's foot, holding it down for a moment. That short delay becomes enough. Walm drops his halberd and pulls out the sword he received earlier. As the wyvern breaks free and swings again, Walm does not retreat. Instead, he steps into the attack and uses the force of the incoming strike to launch himself onto the creature's body. From there, he drives the sword deep into its chest. Once the blade sinks in, he channels his Ignis Fatuus through it. The flames begin burning the wyvern from the inside. The creature thrashes in pain, but Walm refuses to let go. He understands that if it escapes now, it will head straight for the others behind him, including Ayani, Maya, and the remaining troops. Because of that, he holds on no matter what. The wyvern tries to shake him off by diving into the ground and twisting violently, but it fails. Walm tightens his grip and releases his power at full force. The flames burst through the creature's body and erupt out from its back. He continues until the wyvern is completely reduced to ash. Far from the battlefield, Ayani watches the rising smoke from the forest. That sight makes her realize how dangerous this world truly is. Creatures like that exist, and the people who can fight them are the same ones who had once surrounded her, guarded her, and even burned others without hesitation. The thought stays with her as she quietly waits. Soon after, soldiers rush back carrying Walm's body. They place him down in front of her, and the condition he is in shocks her. His injuries are severe, and it is clear he pushed himself far beyond his limits. The soldiers explain that he held onto the wyvern until the very end, and only stopped after killing it. Moritz reacts immediately and orders them to remove Walm's armor. Ayani struggles to understand how someone could keep fighting in that state. The question lingers in her mind as Moritz turns to her and Maya, urging them to start treatment without delay. Maya focuses on checking his internal injuries while Ayani begins working on his limbs. After some time, Walm regains consciousness, coughing as he tries to speak. He urges her to heal him, and she feels relief seeing that he is still alive. As she examines him, she notes the damage clearly. His ribs are shattered, his shoulder is dislocated, his arm bone is broken, and there is widespread internal strain. Even so, she knows how to treat it. She recalls that the last time she healed him, he had also been on the verge of death. That reminder causes Walm's thoughts to drift. He remembers the earlier battle where his camp had been destroyed and how he had woken up surrounded by the bodies of his comrades. That memory creates a heavy silence between them. Ayane feels guilt rising and regrets what happened back then. Walm does not hold on to that blame. He accepts it as part of war and acknowledges that he himself has done the same. He has taken lives, burned enemies, and even used others as shields when needed. Because of that, he does not see himself as any different. That understanding changes how Ayane sees him. She had once thought of him as someone cold and ruthless, but now that image begins to shift. She remembers the small things he had done, allowing her to use warm water, providing supplies, and even stepping in when she needed rest. Those actions no longer feel like manipulation to her. They feel genuine. Moritz interrupts the moment and tells Walm to stay still so the treatment can continue properly. He reminds Ayani to focus. knowing she has too much on her mind. She listens and continues her work. Time passes slowly as they keep treating him. Eventually, the signs of progress appear. In the distance, the outline of their destination finally comes into view. The old fortress near the Mired border stands ahead, and they recognize it as Castle Dunder. After recovering, Walm stands on higher ground and watches the flow of refugees entering the castle. People keep arriving in long lines, carrying whatever they manage to save, then gathering near the kitchens for food. The numbers keep increasing, far more than he expects. Because the entire Mired region is being overrun by the Great Rampage, he understands why people flee, yet something still feels off. Instead of moving further inland, they all stop here at Dunder Castle. Even if the fortress is known for its strength, it cannot hold forever against hundreds of thousands of monsters. That thought stays with him as he walks toward the command office. Inside, he reports his mission clearly and confirms that the person under his protection has been brought safely from Sarajevo Fortress. The officer in charge introduces himself as Brigadier General Sigismund and acknowledges the report. He brings up the story about Walm defeating a wyvern alone. Walm downplays it and explains that he had help and only managed to finish it after finding an opening. That explanation sounds too simple for what actually happened, and because of that, Sigismund struggles to hold back his reaction before bursting into laughter. The guards nearby share the same feeling, making the situation feel almost absurd. After that brief moment, the general turns serious again. He reflects that sending Gerald Berger had been the right decision, and confirms that Berger is still holding Sarajevo Fortress. With that settled, he gives new orders. Walm's squad will continue guarding the healing mages, but Walm himself is still needed at the front due to a shortage of manpower. For now, he is instructed to rest and recover before returning to duty. Walm accepts it, but brings up one concern before leaving. The number of refugees inside the castle bothers him. From his perspective, they could interfere with military operations if things go wrong. Sigismund notices the tension his question creates in the room. Instead of giving a detailed explanation, he keeps it simple and explains that many people refuse to abandon their homeland. For now, Walm is told to focus only on his role. Walm leaves without pressing further, but the thought does not leave him. The situation does not feel like a simple humanitarian decision. Managing such a large population requires supplies, manpower, and constant attention. If the monster horde reaches the castle, everything will collapse into chaos. Because of that, a different possibility forms in his mind. Gathering this many people in one place might be intentional. It could be meant to draw the monsters here. Later, in the infirmary, Ayane is visibly drained after treating patients nonstop. She wishes she could keep going, but her magic has limits. Walm observes her condition and explains that healing even 10 people is already impressive, while she has handled far more. Expecting beyond that is too much. Maya then points out another issue. They are running low on supplies, including medicine and even boiled water. That shortage makes the situation worse. Seeing this, Walm decides to help in a simple way. He uses his water attribute to fill the boiling pots directly. Ayane is surprised to learn that he has another attribute, but he explains that it is not useful in combat. It only reminds him of how his old squad treated him like a walking water source. That memory creates a quiet moment. Ayane reacts to it, though Walm misunderstands her expression and assumes she is only exhausted. He considers stopping the work for the day, but Maya insists they can continue. Because of that, he allows them to proceed, but sets a clear condition. They must stop immediately if they feel unwell. Since the rampage is spreading everywhere, he also assumes the chance of assassination is low, so he does not stay overly tense. Moritz joins him and reacts with surprise to his water attribute. Walm casually mentions he can prepare fruit tea later, which Moritz accepts happily. When asked where the fruit comes from, Walm explains that he collected it from abandoned belongings before leaving Sarajevo Fortress and stored it in his magic pouch. That detail makes Moritz tease him for having a softer side despite his usual serious behavior. At dinner, Walm faces an unexpected situation. A roasted orc head is placed in front of him as food. The others begin eating without hesitation, but he struggles internally. He understands there is a shortage, yet he never imagines eating something like this. Moritz eats casually and explains that consuming monsters and even poisonous creatures helped him build resistance over time. The others show no discomfort either. Walm looks toward Ayane, expecting a similar reaction, but she eats it as well. She explains that during her training, she had already experienced this kind of thing. That leaves Walm with no escape. A plate is placed in front of him with parts considered the best. With no other option, he forces himself to try it. Once he does, the taste surprises him. It is far better than expected. The others watch his reaction closely, clearly entertained. Their amusement makes the atmosphere lighter, and for a moment, Walm relaxes along with them. The next day, he is assigned to the castle gate. His role becomes straightforward. He inspects incoming refugees, assigns them either to combat or labor, and directs them toward the kitchens. As he works, he notices families among the arrivals. That sight brings back his earlier suspicion. If his guess is correct, these people are being gathered for a larger purpose. The thought weighs on him, but he keeps it to himself since he has no authority to act on it. While processing another group, he notices something different. Around 100 people approach, and they are armed. That alone makes him step forward and stop them. As he looks closer, recognition sets in. These are the same adventurers who once fought using guerrilla tactics. Their leader steps forward and requests help, explaining that they have nowhere else to go after fleeing the rampage. Walm does not respond with sympathy. Instead, he recalls their past actions and points out how they once attacked from the shadows. Now, after losing everything, they stand here asking for protection from the same side they fought against. The leader accepts the situation and does not argue. Walm makes it clear that simple words are not enough to erase what happened. He demands a price. The leader understands and accepts it without hesitation, stepping forward and lowering his head. The others react strongly, trying to stop him, but he refuses their help and takes responsibility alone. Walm does not take his life. Instead, he strikes him down and continues hitting him until the point is made. After that, he turns to the rest and subjects them to the same treatment. It is not about revenge alone. It is about making sure they understand the consequences and the conditions for staying. Once it is over, Walm makes the situation clear. There will be no second chance. Any betrayal will be met without mercy. After setting that boundary, he allows them to enter and formally accepts them into the castle. The leader struggles to stand but still shows gratitude, and Walm leaves without looking back. 5 days after arriving at Dunder Castle, the calm breaks without warning. The bell echoes across the fortress, and because of that signal, everyone understands what is coming. The main wave of the Great Rampage is finally here. Soldiers rush toward their assigned positions, and at the same time, refugees are pushed to evacuate deeper inside. One soldier pauses and looks out beyond the walls, and that single glance explains everything. The horizon has turned completely dark. The mass of monsters stretches so far that it blocks the land itself. That sight spreads fear instantly, but there is no time to hesitate. Archers prepare their bows and wait for the right distance. As soon as the horde moves within range, they release a rain of arrows. Many monsters fall, but the effect barely slows the advance. Because their numbers are too large, the horde keeps pushing forward without stopping. The creatures crash into the walls and begin clawing at them, trying to break through. A captain orders the mage unit to release fire attacks to hold them back, but that order changes nothing. There are no mages available. That gap in defense makes the situation worse. At the same time, a group of trolls approaches while carrying a massive log. Their intention becomes clear. They move to use it as a battering ram against the gate. Because of that, the pressure on the defenders increases even more. The soldiers continue firing arrows, but it no longer feels effective. The effort becomes meaningless against such overwhelming numbers. Even experienced fighters begin to feel the weight of the situation. The arrows start running low, and some monsters already manage to climb the walls. Then a warning spreads across the line. A massive hawk dives toward them from above. One fighter reacts quickly, enhancing his movement and striking the bird directly in the eye. Even that effort fails to stop it completely. The creature still manages to grab 2 soldiers and throw them off the wall into the horde below. At that moment, Walm steps in and gives a clear instruction for everyone to get down. Because of that warning, the soldiers immediately lower themselves. Walm releases his Ignis Fatuus, and the sky itself seems to ignite. The bird monsters above are wiped out in an instant. The soldiers stare at him, stunned. With the mask covering his face and the flames surrounding him, his presence becomes impossible to ignore. Recognition spreads quickly. The one standing before them is the wielder of Ignis Fatuus. Walm does not stop there. He walks to the edge of the wall and looks down. The monsters are piling their dead bodies together to create a path upward. That sight makes the situation clear. If left alone, they will soon overwhelm the walls. Because of that, Walm makes a decision. He leaps down directly into the horde. The soldiers watching from above freeze in disbelief as he drops into the mass of enemies below. Before he even touches the ground, he releases his flames again. The fire spreads outward in a wide blast, consuming everything in its path. The monsters burn instantly, their advance collapsing under the sudden destruction. The impact is so overwhelming that the horde itself begins to pull back. After clearing the area, Walm returns to the top of the wall. He removes his mask and takes a moment to breathe. He notices that his power has grown stronger than before. He feels capable of using it again, but there is no need. The monsters have already stopped advancing and now hesitate to come closer. That pause creates a shift in the battlefield. The soldiers gather around him, and their fear begins to turn into hope. His presence alone changes how they see the fight. Even the adventurers who once stood against him cannot hide their amazement. They understand now that his power is far beyond what they had imagined, and because of that, they begin to believe the castle might actually survive this assault. The noise of battle continues outside, but inside the barracks, Walm lies flat on the floor, trying to steal a moment of rest. His body feels heavy after everything he has pushed through, and for a short time it almost seems like he might finally sleep. That brief calm breaks when a soldier approaches and informs him that Sigismund is calling for him. Because of that, Walm forces himself up and follows without wasting time. When he arrives, Sigismund greets him and immediately focuses on the situation at the front. Walm explains that the troops have managed to hold the line through constant attacks, both day and night. However, that success comes with a cost. The soldiers are worn down, their energy nearly gone, and their supplies are running dangerously low. Arrows and throwing weapons are almost depleted, so now their survival depends mostly on the mage soldiers keeping the monsters back. After hearing that, Sigismund turns the discussion toward time. He wants to know how long they can keep holding like this. Walm considers everything he has seen and concludes that they only have about 2 days left, maybe 3 at most. The monsters are no longer attacking blindly. They are adapting, digging tunnels, building crude tools, and trying every possible way to break through the walls. Because of that, the pressure keeps increasing instead of slowing down. Sigismund accepts this judgment and adds that once the monsters manage to climb the walls, everything will collapse into close combat. At that point, casualties will rise sharply and control of the situation will be lost. Even so, he explains that they still have one advantage. Their communication line with their homeland is still intact. And because of that small window, a decision has already been made. He reveals that they plan to abandon Dunder Castle. Instead of fighting to the end, they will retreat and establish a new defensive line in the former Konoha region. Preparations are already happening in secret. Because of that secrecy, Walm realizes this is not just a simple withdrawal. He understands it is being hidden to avoid panic and chaos among the people inside the castle. Sigismund confirms that thought and explains that at dawn, the day after tomorrow, a full retreat will begin all at once. That timing hits Walm hard, because it means everything is already decided. Then Sigismund continues and reveals something even more troubling. The soldiers have been gradually replacing their own men on the walls with Mired troops, prisoners, and refugees. Because of that, Walm directly addresses the part that cannot be ignored. He points out that when the retreat begins, the people crowded inside the castle will not be able to escape. The gates are too narrow, and even trained soldiers will struggle to get through in time. That means most of those people will be left behind. Sigismund does not deny it. Instead, he explains that those who cannot move will have no choice but to barricade themselves and wait for the rampage to pass. Hearing this, Walm understands the reality clearly. Waiting inside the castle is no different from being sentenced to death. Even so, Sigismund continues to justify the decision. He explains that many officers feel the same discomfort, but the situation leaves no better option. If they try to fight properly and hold the castle, they will all be wiped out within days. The losses they have already suffered prove that. Because of that, sacrificing part of the population becomes a way to buy time and weaken the enemy. Walm clenches his fist as the full meaning settles in. The refugees are not being protected. They are being used as bait to draw in the monsters and reduce their numbers while the main force escapes. From a soldier's perspective, he understands the logic behind it, but understanding it does not make it easier to accept, especially when those being sacrificed are mostly civilians. Sigismund steps closer and makes it clear that this is an official order. Their duty is to protect their own nation, even if it means abandoning another. He adds one final condition. If Walm manages to keep the communication lines intact, there might still be a chance to save a small number of refugees. It is not much, but it is the only possibility left. Because of that, Walm forces himself to accept the order. He agrees to comply, even though the weight of it stays with him. When he leaves the room, the atmosphere outside feels heavier than before. As he walks through the castle, he looks at the people around him more carefully. Some are sick, some barely standing, and many look completely drained. Most of them have no idea what is about to happen to them. He notices a sick child among the crowd and feels the urge to step in and help. That instinct rises naturally, but it stops when he remembers what he has been told before. Helping one person will only draw more and create a situation he cannot handle. Because of that, he forces himself to keep moving, even though it does not sit right with him. At that moment, a disturbance breaks out from the walls above. The sudden noise pulls his attention away, and he immediately reacts. He leaps up and rushes toward the source, expecting another wave of monsters. What he finds instead feels strange. The battlefield outside is empty. The monsters that were attacking relentlessly are suddenly gone. Some soldiers begin celebrating, thinking the nightmare has ended and that they have somehow survived. Walm does not share that relief. The silence feels wrong and a sense of unease settles in. Then one soldier notices something unusual in the distance. At first, it looks like a mountain, but something about it feels off. The shape begins to move. As they focus on it, the truth becomes clear. It is not a mountain at all. It is something far worse. The massive figure is alive and flames are rising from its body as it advances. In that moment, everyone understands what they are looking at. It is a dragon, a creature that stands above everything else in the ecosystem. A being that has not been seen for over a century has now appeared in front of them. The realization spreads quickly, turning confusion into fear. This is one of the 5 great dragons, the Flame Emperor Dragon, drawn here by the chaos of the Great Rampage. Because of that, panic starts to spread among the soldiers. Some begin thinking about retreating immediately, while others consider fighting back with whatever weapons they have. But none of those reactions change the reality in front of them. Walm stands still and watches it approach. For the first time in a while, even he cannot move right away. The moment Walm senses that overwhelming surge of magic, he understands what is about to happen before anyone else does. Because of that, he shouts with everything he has, ordering everyone near the wall to move away immediately. His voice carries urgency, but not everyone reacts in time. Some soldiers remain frozen, unable to process the danger in front of them. At the same time, the dragon slowly opens its jaws, and that alone confirms Walm's fear. He does not wait any longer and starts running. A second later, the attack comes. The dragon releases its breath in the form of a massive beam, and it crashes straight into the wall. The impact is beyond anything the soldiers have seen before. The wall does not break or crumble. It disappears completely along with every soldier standing on it. Because of that single attack, an entire section of the battlefield is erased in an instant. Walm is thrown into the aftermath, buried under debris, but he manages to pull himself out. When he looks around, the scale of destruction becomes clear. Nothing remains where the wall once stood. The damage does not stop there. The beam has cut through everything in its path, including the command post. The center of coordination is gone, and with it, any structure the defense once had. As the dust settles, the dragon shifts direction and begins moving away. Its path now leads toward the imperial capital of Hyserk. Watching that, Walm cannot hold himself together for a moment. Everything happening around him feels meaningless, and anger rises as he thinks about how things keep turning out like this. The memory of his fallen squad comes back, followed by the realization that even his new group is now in danger of the same fate. Because of that, he forces himself to move again. Standing still will not change anything. He immediately starts searching for Ayane, Maya, and Moritz. As he runs through the ruins, he passes refugees trapped under broken structures. Their hands reach out and their voices call for help. The sight slows him for a moment, but he keeps going. He chooses not to stop because he knows that hesitation now will cost even more lives later. His focus stays on the clinic. When he reaches it, he notices that the building is still standing. That alone gives him a small sense of relief. He pushes through the crowd outside and heads inside. The moment he enters, the smell hits him. The air is thick with death, and it confirms that many did not survive. Even so, he keeps moving, checking each part of the room quickly. His thoughts narrow down to one thing. He needs to find Ayane. He finally sees her. She is alive, and because of that, the tension inside him loosens for a brief moment. Ayane immediately focuses on his condition, but he does not dwell on it. He steadies himself and explains that he survived because he was near the gate when the attack happened. That explanation leads directly to action. Since the command post is gone and the walls are destroyed, he understands that the monsters will return soon. Because of that, he decides to gather every soldier who can still move and start an evacuation at once. He knows he has never led a force this large, but with Moritz and the remaining squad leaders, he believes they might still manage to escape. He then makes it clear that he will hold the route open for them. However, Ayane does not focus on escape alone. Her attention shifts to the wounded who cannot move, and the refugees inside the castle. Because of that, she insists that they cannot just leave them behind. Walm responds by drawing a line. He explains that those people are not part of their own nation. They are refugees from Mired, and the situation does not allow them to save everyone. To him, trying to do so would only lead to more deaths. Ayane does not accept that reasoning. For her, their origin does not matter. They are still people, and leaving them behind feels wrong. Even though fear is clearly present in her, she still refuses to abandon them. Walm reacts strongly to that. From his perspective, this is not bravery. It is a choice that leads straight to death. Because of that, he urges her to stop resisting and leave while there is still time. But Ayane holds her ground. Even though she admits she is afraid of everything around her, she does not step back from her decision. That resistance forces Walm to pause. At that moment, his thoughts turn inward. He realizes that he has always chosen duty over people, always leaving others behind for the sake of survival and orders. Now, standing here, he sees the same pattern repeating again. At the same time, the situation outside continues to collapse. The officers are mostly gone, and without leadership, the remaining soldiers are lost. Some might try to escape on their own, but most of them are frozen, unsure of what to do next. Soon, a few soldiers approach Walm directly, looking for direction. One of them reports that no commanders of high rank are left alive. The brigade is shattered, and the chain of command no longer exists. Because of that, the responsibility falls onto him whether he wants it or not. Walm's first instinct is still to retreat. Logically, it is the only option that guarantees survival. But as he looks at Ayane, he sees tears running down her face while she continues to hold on to her belief that they should not abandon the others. That moment creates a conflict he cannot ignore. He understands the reality of the situation, but he also understands what choosing to leave would mean. After a brief pause, he reaches a decision. He informs the soldiers that he will secure the broken section of the wall. Then, without hesitation, he declares that it does not matter whether they are trained soldiers or not. Anyone who can move will follow his lead from this point forward. Far from the front lines inside Sarajevo Fortress, Berger receives the report that changes everything. News arrives from Dunder, and because of it, the entire situation becomes clear. The Flame Emperor Dragon has appeared and it has already torn through Dunder Castle. Now it is moving forward without slowing down, crushing mountains, valleys, and anything else in its path as it heads straight toward the imperial capital. Because of that, even the strongest resistance starts to feel meaningless. Berger understands that no ordinary force can stop something like this. Even a full battalion of mages would fail against it. At the same time, another problem rises. Monsters that slipped past Dunder have already started appearing behind Sarajevo. The battlefield is no longer just one front. It is collapsing from every direction. The soldiers turn to Berger, waiting for a decision. Their situation leaves no room for hesitation, but what comes next is not what they expect. Berger remains calm and gives his orders without delay. He directs them to send the Jason cavalry back to the homeland and assign them to evacuating civilians. Because of their speed, they are the only force capable of outrunning the rampage and saving as many people as possible. That decision confuses some of the soldiers. They question why their strongest mobile force should be sent away when they need every advantage to fight. Because of that, Berger explains his reasoning clearly. The homeland is already lost. Trying to defend it directly would only waste the cavalry's strength and speed. If they stay and fight, they will achieve nothing. Instead, their role must change. While the remaining forces hold back the monsters for as long as possible, the cavalry will move people out. If even a portion of the population manages to escape to safer lands, especially the distant island nations, then something of the empire will survive. Because of that, Berger confirms the truth they are struggling to accept. They are abandoning their own empire. He does not soften it or hide it. To him, the decision is already final. From that point, his words shift from strategy to resolve. He explains that those who remain will fight to delay the monsters, even if it only buys a few moments. Every second matters because it allows more people to escape. If they flee without order, the chaos will cost even more lives. But if they hold their ground, even knowing they will die, then their sacrifice will protect something greater. He thinks about the people waiting in the homeland, families, loved ones, and everything that gave meaning to their lives. Because of that, he refuses to let all of it disappear without resistance. Even if the land is lost, the people must live on. For a brief moment, he reflects on something more personal. He wonders whether his country ever cared for him the same way he cared for it. That thought does not last long. It no longer matters. What matters is that he has always loved it, and he will prove it until the end. Because of that belief, he accepts what lies ahead. He understands that he will not survive this. Still, he chooses to stand where he is and give everything he has left. To him, dying here is not failure. It is the final act of loyalty. The soldiers around him fall silent as they listen. There is nothing left to argue. The path forward has already been decided. At the same time, back at Dunder Castle, Walm begins to take control of what remains of the situation. With the command structure gone, he gathers the surviving platoon leaders and squad leaders and organizes them quickly. Because of the chaos around them, every moment matters. He assigns roughly 30 soldiers to each leader so they can maintain some form of structure. Then he turns to the civilians and has them collect anything that can be used to block or slow down the enemy. Every object becomes valuable when survival depends on time. Next, he focuses on the breach in the wall. He orders the Earth Attribute users to raise new barriers and seal the opening as much as possible. At the same time, the remaining mages are positioned along the walkways to provide support from above. Because of the earlier attack, Walm knows another wave of monsters will come soon. There is no illusion of safety. This is only a pause before the next assault. He gives clear instructions to the archers. They are not to hold anything back. Every arrow must be used because if the monsters break through again, the castle will not survive another collapse. Soon enough, the battle begins again. Waves of monsters rush toward the newly raised earth wall. The soldiers meet them head-on with long spears while arrows rain down from behind. The defense holds for the moment, but the pressure never stops. Some monsters manage to climb higher. A wolf reaches the top, but a shield bearer steps forward and blocks its path before it can break through. Walm moves along the line, watching everything closely and stepping in wherever the defense weakens. At one point, a wolf bites down on a soldier's arm, but before the situation worsens, Al cuts the creature down. Because of that quick reaction, the line holds. Walm acknowledges his effort, recognizing that letting him live before was the right choice. Al accepts it quietly, understanding the meaning behind those words. The fight continues without pause. A hobgoblin forces its way up, but Walm reacts instantly, driving his blade into its throat while Al finishes it off. Their coordination becomes natural, each covering the other without needing to think. Despite the constant pressure, the defense starts to stabilize. The number of enemies remains high, but the truly massive threats have not appeared yet. Because of that, a small sense of hope begins to form. It feels like they might actually hold the line. At the rear, however, not everyone shares that feeling. Brigade Commander Eustace watches the battle with disbelief. He cannot understand why they are still fighting when retreat should already be underway. The conflict inside him grows as he struggles to decide whether to stay or leave. Back on the wall, the fight continues. A lizard man reaches the top, but Walm cuts it down before it can act. The rhythm of battle continues, and for a moment it feels controlled. Then everything changes again. Without warning, something breaks through the line and strikes before anyone can react. A soldier is thrown down instantly, and the presence behind the attack becomes clear. A Dullahan has appeared. Its arrival shifts the entire atmosphere. This is no ordinary enemy. Even among monsters, it stands at a higher level. As it steps forward, it focuses directly on Walm and challenges him. Because of that, the battlefield narrows in an instant. Walm steadies himself and prepares, knowing that what comes next will not be like the fight before.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.